happens. Hey, we're live. Look at that. Welcome to the pre-show, everybody. It's the pre-show for today's 220-1001 A+ study group. We've got about 10 minutes before we get started. We're at the top of the hour. It'll be 12 noon here in Florida, here at the world headquarters that you are seeing over my shoulder, which is this desk. Hello, chat room. Hope everybody's doing well today. This is one of those times where it's kind of nice to have a study group available. I need to pop the chat out so I can see what people are saying. There we go. We'll put this over here. That's good. We'll pause the live stream. I don't need to see myself. That works fine. Welcome, chat room. Hi, everybody. Today's 220-1001, so it's our Core 1 study group. All brand new questions, as we do every month. First hour will be me asking you questions. The second hour will be you asking me questions. We'll open up the phone lines, do all of those things. Let's do a quick check. We're recording up here on our OBS. We're recording down here on our local video recorders. And we're, of course, recording on YouTube. If there's any problems or things, I usually will edit or replace the YouTube version eventually. But usually there's not. Usually we're just fine. We don't have to change that, which means the replay of this is available immediately afterwards. We got about 8.5 minutes before we get started. We will get things going. I think we're in pretty good shape for the study group presentation. I guess we can go ahead and get that going. There we are. I could probably turn this down a little bit and a little bit here too. There we go. Very nice. Oh, get things going. It's been an extra week. Here we are at the first week of the month. I had a week off. So it's nice to be back, to be doing these things. Is there any type of apprenticeship for IT in America? There's not. You know, in the UK and in some other places, it was very popular in the UK for a while, was to have apprenticeships for IT. And there may still be those. It was something that was very government focused. But then there were problems. Of course, there's always problems. Somebody's got to mess up a good thing. But we generally do not have apprenticeships in the United States for information technology. Usually you'll get an entry-level position in something like a help desk, and then you'll cut your teeth there, so to speak. So you kind of get things going there. I guess it's bad that I just locked my workstation. Let's unlock everything, shall we? Get things going again. There we go. Oh, it unlocked because I'm wearing my watch. Very good. So that's why they kind of put you at the help desk. You churn away, learn some things there, and then finally they send you up the ranks to whatever you're interested in. So in the help desk, you kind of figure out, do I like servers? Do I like databases? Do I like networking? Do I like security? What do I like? And you can kind of go from there and kind of get that going. Yes, I have a new keyboard, and apparently the keyboard has a lock button. And it locks everything if I hit that button. That's one of the things. I like this new keyboard from Logitech. It's a nice wireless keyboard, and it's ergonomic. There's curve to it. Kind of see the curve there. It's a nice ergonomic keyboard, and it's got a nice feel. The keys are much snappier than the Microsoft version of the ergonomic that Microsoft makes. But some of the keys on here are very, very badly placed. And there is software you can use to change what the keys do, a number of these keys. For example, it's kind of hard to see where you are. Let's see if we can do this. So on this keyboard, there's a backspace button. I know it's kind of blurry where you are there, but there's a backspace button just above the backspace button. Notice there's this big fat button right up here. No, right up there. There it is. That's print screen. They put a big fat print screen button right up next to the backspace button, and it print screens to a file if you're running Mac OS. And so I'll be typing along. I'll hit the backspace, and of course go a little bit higher, and I hear the chunk chunk sound of it writing two separate screens to disk. So I have to go in and delete. Well, they have software where you can disable that or change any of these keys to be anything you'd like. So you go in the software, you click the button to change it, you set it to none. Doesn't work. Doesn't help at all. I've removed the software. I've deleted it. I have reinstalled it, and it worked until I reboot it again. And then when you reboot, it goes back to the way it was. So they haven't quite figured out the Mac OS things about that. Which make is this Logitech keyboard? I don't know. It's a Logitech part number 820. Logitech 820. So there you go. That's the part number. Very small. Very tiny part number. Why do we put part numbers so small? You'll know. You'll understand later why it doesn't make any sense. So that's what's going on. About 4.5 minutes until we get started. Looks like my tweet is coming through. The mouse. What's the deal with this mouse? It's huge. This is a mouse made by. It's a hand shoe mouse made by Hippus. Hippus, Hippus, and they call it a hand shoe. I guess primarily because they made it. They made it in the Netherlands. They're a Netherlands company in the Netherlands. I guess not appropriate to say Netherlands company. But your whole hand fits on it. Like it's enormous. And they have different sizes. It's just enormous. But your whole hand fits on it and just rests there. Just so nice. Just so comfortable. So a lot of ergonomics going on here because I spend a lot of time at this desk. Not only is this where we do the live streams, but when I'm not doing a live stream, this is where I write all of my content. This is where I do everything, manage my website. Everything's done in this chair. So that's why all this is going on. You know, I need to get rid of this drink. Let's move some things out of the way. I'm going to unplug here. I'm always afraid I'm going to knock a drink over right in the middle of the live stream. Let's get rid of the big drink and leave the coffee. Okay. All right. That's better. See, I did come back. I didn't leave you. We got stuff going on. Okay, we've got about 3 minutes to go. Let's do a last check of things. And if anybody's ever wondering, what is all this stuff? What mixer is this? What camera is you using? What is the video switcher? It's all on the... It's all on the website, professormesser.com/studio. That's where it is. When did I start wearing glasses on my videos? Well, years ago. Years and years ago. Over 5 years ago. A long time ago. I just got tired of wearing contacts in my videos. I just got tired of wearing the contacts. And one day I'm just sick and tired of wearing these contacts. So I just put glasses on. And I said, well, it makes me look smarter. So when I say things... So I'm smarter when I say it. I don't know if that's true or not, but I just went with that. I just kind of went with that program. We'll see if that's really the case. And just started wearing them. I still have my contacts because sometimes you want to go swim or do you want to do something outside or you just don't want to wear that in. But there's a whole nother set of things you have to deal with to get that going. Let's see. These are going. That's going. I think we're in pretty good shape here. I think I've got things loaded up. I've got, those are ready. Yeah, I think we're in good shape. So good. Sean says, you bought my practice exams and course notes. Thank you for doing that. You know, one of those things about the exam, you just never know what you're going to, if you've never taken the A+ exam before, any industry exam before, you never know what the experience is going to be like. So first time through, even if you don't pass it, at least you got a feel for it. And I specifically wrote my questions to have that same feel. I'll talk more about that once we get into the study group. But I wanted them to have a similar cadence, a similar style, a similar voice, if you will, to the actual exam questions. And I avoid a lot of the things people do with exam questions. Like there's a lot of bad questions on the internet. And it's very depressing for people to go through and study all of this. And then they take very bad questions and they think that they haven't studied the right thing. No, you just have bad questions. So that's one of those things. So we'll break down exactly what some of those things are. We're about to get started. Thanks for being here, everybody. Thanks. Settle in. We're going to get the A+ study group going in just a few seconds. Let me make sure I've got everything I need on my side. I think I do. I think we are in pretty good shape. I need to change this, get this ready. Nope, that's not it. That one. It's one of these buttons. And let's get a green light going here. Got a green light? Green light. I love it. it looks like we are in pretty good shape. I think it's time to start a study group, everybody. Let's do this. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the August 2020 Professor Messer 220-1001, which is also the Core 1 exam study group. We have a study group today. We're in this first hour. I will be asking you questions that come directly from the Core 1 A+ exam objectives. And I've just got a set of questions I write brand new for every single one of these. And of course, you can go back and watch our entire library of these that are available on my website. In the second hour, I stop asking questions, I open up the phone lines, and you start asking questions, and I'll answer pretty much anything. It can usually be about the A+ exam or careers or anything. It doesn't have to even be about technology, but we open up the phone lines and let you ask questions anyway. We have so many things to go through today. I've got a whole set of questions and answers to go through. But first, let me tell you, if you are watching this live, how you can participate. What you can do is pop open a new browser window and visit professormesser.com/QA. That will open up a new window, and there's a question waiting for you right there. There is also a way that you can do this on your mobile device, on your smartphone, on your tablet. Visit your favorite app store and look for the Socrative student app. I should probably add that to the slide. It is a Socrative student app. There's also a Socrative teacher app. That's the one for me. The Socrative student app is the one for you. It will ask you for a room name. That room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. Now, if you do all of that, there will be a question waiting for you. All you have to do is visit that page, and the question on that page currently says, what method does ECC memory use to detect errors? Is it a look-ahead cache? Is it parity bits? Is it redundant data? Is it checksums? Or is it proxies? What you should do is lock in your answer there. Don't put the answer online. That's our main rule of the study group. Don't put an answer in the chat room or any hints in the chat room. Lock it in there online. We will come back to this question and get the answer in just a moment. I want to welcome you to the study group, though. There's so many things that are going on around here. We've got so much content that's happening and plenty of things that are being worked on behind the scenes. We put a few new videos out in the last couple of weeks. But of course, you can always follow what's going on here. And one way that you can really help us is to visit our YouTube page at professormesser.com/YouTube. Or if you're watching this live, click the like button and subscribe to the channel. Those subscriptions do mean a lot. The reason YouTubers always tell you, please subscribe, smash the button, whatever that craziness is they say, they are trying to make sure that YouTube and the folks at Google are aware how much you like this content. And that really helps because I now have someone I can call at YouTube. I have meetings with them occasionally. We will go through new things that are coming out that nobody's seeing yet. And we've been able to participate in some educational-based betas thanks to you and you liking and subscribing to our channel. So there is a method to that madness, we always say. Don't forget about the Q&A that we do every day on the Twitter. You go to professormesser.com/Twitter. I put the same thing on Instagram. So if you're not a Twitter person, but you're an Instagram person, you can get the same thing over on Instagram by following us there, professormesser.com/Instagram. Another way you can support what we're doing is to visit our Amazon link. Go to professormesser.com/Amazon. You purchase things on Amazon, you pay the same low price, but Amazon gives us a little bit of a commission, a little bit of a finder's fee, and those little commissions tend to add up over time. Every little bit helps, and that is a great way to support what we're doing without you having to spend any money whatsoever, which is kind of nice. You can also earn a continuing education unit credit. If you don't know what that is, you probably don't need one, but if you are already certified, this might help you. Sometime in this first hour, I will give you instructions and tell you all about this. But in the meantime, you can just think about what we're doing here and keep listening out for that continuing education unit piece. I also want to tell you that all of the questions we're going through today are from the 220-1001 exam. That exam was released on January the 15th of 2019, so it's been out about a year and a half or so. We expect this exam will be retired somewhere in July of 2022 or somewhere around there. That's an estimation, but the point is if you're watching this live here in August of 2020, then you got plenty of time to study. That's the real point of this. To pass this 1001 exam, it's a scale from 100 to 900, and you need to get a 675. I know, it doesn't make sense, but that's what it is. What you want to do is just do the best you can. You'll earn points for every question that you answer. Each question's worth a different number of points, and hopefully you'll get up to 675 when everything is over. One thing I want to tell you, though, is that if you are studying for the 1001 and you have older study materials that say they're the 900 series or the 901 series, don't use those older materials. The 1001 exam was revamped with new topics. Over 20% of the exam is brand new. So you don't want to be in a case where you're studying old materials, you walk into the exam, and you're already going to miss 20% of the exam. That'll fail you right there. You don't want that at all. So not a situation you want to run into. If you want to know what will be tested on the exam, I'll get the objectives. It's at professormesser.com/objectives. The topics we're going to go through today are mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, hardware and network troubleshooting, and potpourri. Those will be all of the topics we go through. If you want to come back for the 1002, we're doing those on Thursday. So if you're somebody who's studying for the 1002, you may want to stop back by for the live event that we're going to have in just a couple of days. I'll also let you know that if you're somebody who's trying to find materials to study, you may want to consider my Success Bundle, where I've taken everything I've created, all of my videos, all the audio, study group audio MP3s, course notes, practice exams, my exclusive Exam Hacks ebook that shows you how to hack the exam, things you need to do during the exam that might help you get a better score. They will help you get a better score. There's some great hacks in there for studying prior to the exam and when you get in the exam room. And you get to ask questions for this study group that are priority. So some things to do there. If you want to learn about that, it's professormesser.com/1001success. Also want to let you know that there are also questions that you can get for free that are on my website. This is my Take 10 Challenge, 10 question practice test for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. Free. I love free. So go to professormesser.com/take10, TAKETEN, and you can answer those Take 10 Challenge questions. Also let you know this study group is available on replay in a podcast form. Visit professormesser.com/podcast to add it to your podcast catching program. For also, some of you may notice if you go back and you look at the things that we do on the study group in our YouTube video descriptions, there are timestamps now. I've been there for a few years, but don't forget about those. You can jump through materials very quickly on the timestamps and find exactly what you want. My marketing manager, Lori, goes through this about a day later. Hi, Lori. If you're in the chat room, say hi to Lori. She's watching the chat go by as she's replaying this and putting all the timestamps in, and we really appreciate her doing that. It does go a long way to doing all of those things. We're going to go back to this question in just a moment. Here it is, which asks, what method does ECC memory use to detect errors? Is it a look-ahead cache? Is it parity bits? Is it redundant data? Is it checksums, or is it proxies? And you can see a large number of you. Apparently, my percentages are gone. Apparently, this is it. This is what we get now. There's no percentages today. We just can see parity bits is the biggest one we have on the screen. What, 75% of you somewhere in there have chosen parity bits? I don't know where the percentages went, everybody. But we can kind of see what people are answering. Checksums got a 17%. Just made that one up. And then, of course, it looks like single digits for look-ahead cache, redundant data, and proxies. A lot of you folks say ECC uses those parity bits, and ECC does indeed use parity bits. One of the things we focus on with knowing about how ECC works is being able to have an extra bit of data to have a determination on whether there are errors in the memory or not. And if you watch my video on those parity bits, I talked a little bit about this last month. You can go watch last month's study group replay, and we go through some calculations. We calculate our own parity and determine if a particular byte is corrupted based on the parity that we created. So you can see those things. If you go back to last month, the July 2020 A+ Core 1 study group, you'll see that as well. So I think you've got the idea now. You can get into and look at the questions that we have. You can get a feel for how to answer those questions online. But one of the things that you may not be aware of, and that's pretty important for the exam, is the first set of questions, the first handful, first 5 or so set of questions on the exam are not multiple choice questions. This one we just did with the ECC memory is a multiple choice question. But you may find on the exam, when you first sit down, you're going to get questions that are anything but multiple choice. They're going to be questions like drag and drop questions, matching questions, questions where you have to put things in a particular order from highest to lowest or fastest to slowest. You never know exactly what you will get, but of course, all of the questions come from the CompTIA exam objectives. So what I have for you, and whenever you get the first new question of every study group, this is one where you will get a performance-based question. And I have a performance-based question for you today. If you're listening on the podcast, this one won't help you very much. But the performance-based question that you'll deal with today is one that, before I flip over there, I'm going to change one thing. I can see on my screen, it looks kind of funny. So I'm going to change, not funny like haha either. Funny like you can't see what you're supposed to see on the screen. So here we go. Now you'll be able to see on the screen. Here's your performance-based question of the day that asks, identify the interface and its use. Identify the interface and its use. And you can see 5 separate interfaces are on the screen. They are from this very particular device, this computing device, very small one that is here, and has 5 interfaces on the back of it. I'd like you to tell me what all 5 of those interfaces are and tell me what you would use them for. So this is one where, again, no answering in the chat room. The link is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. You can go right to that question. It's a fill in the blank. I guess I should click the link for those of you trying to go over and answer the question. Identify the interface and its use. There you go. So now you can fill in the blank that I have for you there and see if you can answer. See if you can recognize, identify, and then tell me what it's used for. Or tell me a use that you would probably use it for on this. We're going to give you a little bit of leeway on the use part. But if you were presented with this device and they said, hey, go install this device. All right. What would you be plugging in and how would you be using it and what would you put into those interfaces? I have a pretty good idea what I would do. I'd like to see what you would do. If you think you know the answer, no answers in the chat room, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer there. Plenty to see for having those there. While you're doing that, there's a question in the chat room about the A+ exam. I've heard some individuals have the Good for Life A+ certification. Will employers be able to tell the difference between that versus the latest one? Yes, they would. You'll notice that employers are looking for the A+ CE certification. That is the continuing education. They don't want your A+ certification from 10 years ago or whatever it was. Was it 2009? It might have been 2 years, 2011. It was a long time ago when we stopped having Good for Life certifications. And the international standard said you need to update this and make sure you update these every few years so that everybody has the latest knowledge. So employers are looking for the latest flavor. We call it, colloquially, we call it the A+ exam. It's really the A+ CE for continuing education. And if you could have gotten your A+ certification 10 years ago and simply renewed it every year. When you renew it, it turns into the CE. So it's one of those situations where if you didn't renew it, then you only have the Good for Life. That doesn't do you any good these days. You do have to keep it up to date or have the latest version of it, the A+ CE. And if you ever log into the CompTIA website, you look at your certifications, it tells you which flavor you have. So you'll know exactly which one it is. A lot of people get them. I've had them for so long, and they just update the certifications. The goal, I think, for most people is you take the exam one time, and then you simply do the renewal process every 3 years to make sure you keep everything up to date, which I think is a good way to do it if you ever try to break through and figure out the different details of that. So here we have this very small computing device, probably a device you would only use as for very particular purposes. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But if you go through this and you're looking at this, we need to figure out what these interfaces are. So let's step through each one of these to be able to figure out what these are, how we would use them. And you'll notice I didn't mark one of the interfaces. Maybe we'll save that one for a little bonus here at the end. So let's step through each one of these interfaces. We'll clear the board and we'll start with the first one. So the first one we were looking at was this device, this connection right here. You can see inside it's got 8 different pins there. That is your Ethernet connection. So if you're plugging in and connecting to the network, that is the one you would use to be able to connect that up. That's very clearly an Ethernet jack. The way you tell that versus maybe the phone jack or a modem jack for a plain old telephone system, the POTS line, is it has 8 different pins inside of it. I know it's kind of hard to see on the screen there, but it is coming to you at 1080p, so you're at least getting high definition there. There are 8 pins inside of it, so that must be a RJ45. So that's an Ethernet connection. That's what we would connect to the network. Next set of interfaces are these blue ones here. That may be a gimme. Those are USB interfaces. Those USB interfaces, what will we use those for? The USB interfaces would be used, I think for this device, you'd plug in your keyboard and your mouse. I think that's what you would use. That's why there's 2 of them. So you can plug one into the keyboard and one into the mouse, because this is a very small device. There's not much going on. There's no other interfaces, we think. We can't see the front of it, obviously. But other things you could, of course, plug into this. If you have other USB devices you need to plug into this device, of course, anything USB related, you can plug into this and have it there. These next 2 may be a little bit more difficult. Yeah, since this is a blue color, we could assume that this is a USB 3.0 device. We can't always be sure of that because the colors aren't necessarily always going to be accurate, but most of the time they are. It's not a standard that the colors really match this every single time, but most manufacturers do, just because it's so much easier to be able to do that. Now, these next 2 are a little bit different, maybe because they're so similar. You can see they're very different interfaces. The interface here is very different than this one. This interface, HDMI. So if you're somebody who's plugged in any television or consumer video device, that HDMI may look very familiar to you. The high definition connectivity and most connections to monitors these days are HDMI. Makes it very easy to plug in and get things running. It's very standardized. And that's where we might plug in our console, plug in the screen so we can use this very small device, being able to use it. But of course, kind of confusing in a way is this next interface over to the right. That is a DisplayPort interface. So we effectively have 2 separate video outputs on this very odd device, isn't it? 2 separate video outputs on the single device. One that's HDMI and one that is a DisplayPort interface. Kind of unusual to see that on a device like this, but there it is. You've got, now at least you can see there's a couple here you can use. Maybe you have a monitor that's using this, or maybe this device will support 2 separate video outputs to be able to use it. That's at least an idea anyway, to have that there. And then we have this last interface, or this little round one off to the side. That's a TRS interface, tip, ring, sleeve. That is an interface you commonly plug in audio output. So you can plug in some speakers, plug in some headphones, and be able to, I'm assuming it's an output, it might be an input, or it might be both, as we've seen on some of these. And it could be TRRS, I'll accept that. We can't tell from this, but it's like a TRS type connection. To have this here, and maybe it does both input and output with TRRS. Could, of course, be that, certainly, to have this here. Now, the only one we didn't mention was this interface way over here to the side, and that's a power connection. Probably an external brick, converts from AC into DC power. We plug in the DC power connection, and we're able to use this device. That's where we get the power from. So we've got power, an RJ45 Ethernet, some USB, some HDMI, some DisplayPort, and some TRS. These are the types of things that you may need to know for your exam, not necessarily to recognize the interface on site, but recognize the interface and also know what it's there for. The exam very rarely asks you for trivia. You're not going to get a question about what port number does HTTP use. You're not going to get that question on the exam. So if you're busy studying that flashcard, HTTP port 80, HTTP port 80, that doesn't help you. You have to know what that's used for to really help you on the exam. So change your flashcard to put HTTP and what HTTP does and correlate it back to port 80. So a similar situation to that. That's one of those situations. This is probably a thin client computer. This is probably a computing device that is either maybe a media streamer or thin client. That's what I would probably think that this is used for. It'd be perfect for a media streamer. You plug in power, Ethernet. This could be the back of one of the media streaming devices, the consumer devices you can grab and put onto your television. But this might also be a device that's used for a thin client that is using the network connection to connect back, and we use our mouse and keyboard in our video to be able to remotely use these applications. Lots of different applications for this little small device and being able to use those things, but those interfaces are the important part. It does kind of look like a Chrome box. I have some other video devices here I was going to pull out and do these as well. This is not a device I own, so this was just a device I grabbed because it had a really nice set across the back to be able to see what those are. Very small to have that there. Let's hopefully you've gone through this performance-based question. This is just a single idea of some things. If you want to go through other performance-based questions, go back through the last 12 months of our videos. You'll be able to go through and learn a lot about some of the things that may be asked of you in that performance-based section. Let's now move to some multiple choice-based questions. I have all brand new multiple choice questions for you. And let's start with this one that asks, a system administrator has configured a connection on a smartphone that uses TCP 993. Which of the following is associated with this configuration? Is this updating the OS, receiving email messages, downloading certificates, synchronizing with the cloud, or blocking known vulnerabilities? A system administrator has configured a connection on a smartphone that uses TCP 993. Which of the following is associated with this configuration? Is it updating the OS, receiving email messages, downloading certificates, synchronizing with the cloud, and blocking known vulnerabilities? If you think you know the answer, no answering in the chat room, please head over to professormesser.com/QA and you can get your question answered there. It's one of those where if you ever start going through and trying to figure out what it is, you may be able to take a few of these and get rid of them on the list. Maybe you know what some of these things are. This is a very good example, by the way, of what I just mentioned, where we're asking you about TCP 993. And notice there's no specific protocols listed or technologies listed in the list of options there. You have to know what it's used for and then be able to answer the question. So this is a very good example of one that's sort of this multiple step question and being able to step through 993. I know what that is. Let's go to the next thing. So hopefully you're familiar with what TCP 993 is. If you are not, take a guess. And that's probably one of the best pieces of advice I can give you. Never leave anything blank. The one thing we do know about the exam is that you get no points if you don't answer anything. You also get no points if you get it wrong. And they don't take points away from you if you get it wrong. It's one of those situations too. So as you go through this list of things and trying to figure it out, you should be able to be more familiar with this. It might help you to be able to break those out. So feel free to go through this list, figure out what these might be, have an idea of what those different options are. Hopefully you're familiar with this. This is one where you do have to step through this. So maybe don't ever leave questions blank. Always take a guess because you might get it right. So that's the key. Never leave those questions blank. It doesn't hurt you to guess. The only thing it can possibly do is help you. So always take a guess at that. Let's see how you did with this one. Let's go back through this question. It asked, a system administrator has configured a connection on a smartphone that uses TCP 993. The question asked, which of the following is associated with this configuration? And let's see if we can go, is it updating the OS, receiving email messages, downloading certificates, synchronizing with the cloud, or blocking known vulnerabilities? And I don't know, 70% of you, we don't have any percentages today. So that's one where maybe 70% of you got that one right. I think that's one of those situations. If you ever start trying to figure out the details, receiving email messages, 70% or so of you, I think, did pretty well. Only a few of you, maybe 15%, said synchronizing with the cloud, and then a very small number said blocking known vulnerabilities, downloading certificates, or updating the operating system. So it's one of those where you might run into that and working through this. I know we don't have percentages. In fact, on the back side of this, I'm going to do a quick refresh. Maybe it will figure out for me that it's not giving, nope, it's just not giving me percentages. Who needs percentages? What good is that? It's one of those situations. Wait, guess what? Now did I say 70? Is that what I said? Thank you very much. I've only been doing this for years and years, looking at the screen. So it was 70% of you. Got that one absolutely right. Ding, ding, ding. 14% said synchronizing with the cloud. I was kind of off on that one. Maybe I get points off on that. And being able to use this. Retrieving email messages is the right thing. This protocol that we were talking about, or at least the port number that was referenced, was TCP 993. It's the secure version of IMAP, IMAP S. And IMAP, of course, is one that is used to retrieve mail from a mail server and view the mail that you might have on the mail server. So this is one where this might help you knowing what that particular number is. Notice nothing in the answer said IMAP or IMAP S. You're not going to get those questions. Instead, it will be questions like this that break through what these things happen to be, or try to get you to think about what these things might happen to be. IMAP is the Internet Message Access Protocol. If you are receiving emails, you'll be using IMAP. You could also be receiving emails through POP. POP3, I guess, the most current version of it. The only one you can really find is POP. POP and IMAP. Now, if you're sending messages, it would be SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. In our case, we're receiving messages. In fact, the only thing we really had to go with was TCP 993. That's the thing that should ring a bell in your head. It said 993, that's IMAP S. That means I must be receiving emails, and 70% of you said yes, receiving email messages is the way to do that. Now, some of you said synchronizing with the cloud. IMAP S, or TCP 993 specifically, is usually associated with IMAP. It's usually a mail-type protocol, so synchronizing with the cloud would not be used for that. We've got updating the OS. 4% said updating the OS, not used for that. Downloading certificates, usually you do that over HTTPS, not used for that, only 4%. And blocking known vulnerabilities, we don't use protocols to block known vulnerabilities, we just block it. So only 7% of you chose that as well. The correct answer, the one most of you got, 70% of you said yes, receiving email messages is what you would use. Now, would you see situations where something other than IMAP was used to receive email? Yes, POP is still out there. There are still some devices that won't support IMAP, but you still need some way to retrieve messages. Fortunately, those situations are getting fewer and fewer to be able to do that. So a good example for being able to do that is that it's still out there and it's still running, and you will still run across it. There are some technologies that just aren't in the exam anymore. You're not asked about token ring anymore. You're not asked about floppy drives anymore. Those technologies are completely gone, but you will still find IMAP and POP out there. Absolutely, for doing that. So hopefully those of you that answered receiving email messages, answer B, you got that one absolutely correct. Well done with that. Let's do another one. Let's hop into these. I've been talking a lot, so let's kind of get through these. Next question asks, which of the following would be associated with 802.11ac? Which of the following would be associated with 802.11ac? Is it 2.4 gigahertz communication? Is it 150 megabits per second throughput per stream? Is it identifies users via RFID? Is it 8 multi-user MIMO streams? Is it 40 megahertz channel bandwidths? Well, those are 5 very technical specific things. Which of the following would be associated with 802.11ac? Would it be 2.4 gigahertz communication? Would it be 150 megabits per second throughput per stream? Would it be that it identifies users via RFID? Would it be that it has 8 MU MIMO streams? Or is it that it has a 40 megahertz channel bandwidth? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See what it happens to be. Some of you, I think, may be familiar with 802.11ac. You should certainly learn about those and what it is. If you think you know the answer, lock it in at professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers or hints in the chat. You don't want to run into those situations either, or that's a situation where you don't give anybody, because we don't have that in the real exam, do we? We're sitting in front of a screen. We have nothing available. No Googling. We don't have aren't able to write anything down unless they give you paper in a testing center, or online, of course, you do have a way to write things down on the electronic whiteboard, be able to have that. So you do have some options, at least, to write things down. Maybe that might help as well to have those. 802.11ac. A lot of you have locked in your answer. Let's see how you did with this. Which of the following would be associated with 802.11ac? Is it that there is a 2.4 gigahertz communication, 150 megabits per second throughput per stream? It identifies users via RFID. It has 8 multi-user MIMO streams or 40 megahertz channel bandwidth. And we're a little torn on this one. These numbers are way off. What happened? This has the same statistics as the last one that we did. Maybe if I do a refresh, it'll straighten things up a little bit. How did we do? Well, this is quite a situation, isn't it? We're just going to refresh all day and figure out the details. So we have 41% of you said 8 multi-user MIMO streams. That's what that MIMO means. And 35% of you say 2.4 gigahertz communication. 11%, a tie for third, said 150 megabits per second throughput per stream, and 11% said 40 megahertz channel bandwidth. And only 2% said that identifies users via RFID. You ever get into those situations and figuring out the details? Hopefully that will be one that works through. Let's talk about 802.11ac, and then I'll tell you what I think the right answer is. 802.11ac is kind of the most common, newest, I won't say the most common, but certainly one of the newest standards that is out. It's been out for quite some time now. There's new versions of these wireless standards that will be out soon. But right now, 802.11ac is certainly the most prevalent if you're looking for a new access point, one that's out there pretty good. It is a technology that only operates in the 5 gigahertz band. Now, one of the interesting things, if you go to look to purchase an 802.11ac router or wireless access point, it will tell you that it's a dual band device, that it works on 5 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz. But wait, if there's 5 gigahertz for AC, if you were using 2.4 gigahertz, it's really using the previous version of the standard 802.11n, interestingly enough, because 802.11ac only operates in the 5 gigahertz band. And it's a very nice standard, adds increased channel bonding, so you get lots of bandwidth that you can push through these as long as you have lots of radios in these devices. The modulation has been changed, so you're able to put more data over the same frequencies in the same amount of time. Very useful to have that. And one of the things that it has in it, which is fantastic, are multi-user MIMO streams. These are 8 of them maximum for multi-user MIMO streams, which means we can have multiple users communicating back and forth to this device at the same time over the same frequencies. So people can be streaming to different machines, and the streaming is using the same frequency at the same time. That is pretty interesting technology. The fact that it even works is remarkable. But it is one that adds a lot of efficiency because the multi-user MIMO can be going to separate machines at the same time from a single access point. Very nice. Very nice to have that, up to 8 different ones, 8 different streams to have this, which if you're in my house, you need that. There's a lot of streaming going on to have that. That means the right answer here is the answer D, 8 multi-user MIMO streams. We know it's not 2.4 gigahertz communication because the 802.11ac does not use 2.4 gigahertz. The speeds, per stream speeds, are much faster. The 150 megabit per second is an 802.11n standard. Does not identify users via RFID, which would be kind of nice, but it doesn't. RFID, you kind of have to be close. And we have other ways to authenticate users onto wireless networks anyway. We don't generally do it via RFID. And the channel bandwidth for 802.11ac can be quite broad, quite large. We can have up to 160 megahertz channel bandwidths for 802.11ac. Very nice to have those functions and features in that version. And since it's at 5 gigahertz, you have a lot more bandwidth to work through than that much more congested 2.4 gigahertz range. That means our answer here is answer D, 8 multi-user MIMO streams. That is the right answer. If you answer D, that would be the only option here that would be associated with the 802.11ac standard. And of course, you do need to know these standards for the exam. The standards are all in my 221,001 video section 2.4 called, aptly enough, wireless standards for those. Very useful to have that functionality. This is a question you need to know those differences. What are the things unique to these specific versions? They're all in there. You can find all of those different options. Make sure you're familiar across the board, A, B, G, N, and AC standards. There will be, of course, more standards coming on the next version of this exam someday, years from now. So you'll certainly want to know this, and then you'll have to know more of them later on anyway. So learn them all now. Get them locked in. It'll be easier for you when you have to figure that out later. Well, you can see already, we've already talked about a lot of different things in this already. There's so many different topics you have to know about networking and hardware and understanding the differences between all these wireless standards and knowing the protocols and trying to break down how to troubleshoot all of these things. Well, one of the things that I do is I've created a set of practice exams for you so that once you have kind of encapsulated all of this into your brain and you're wondering, am I ready to take this exam? I've created a set of practice exams that absolutely will take you through that so that you can kind of figure out for yourself, do I know everything I need to know? This is an exam where everything that's in this exam has been designed to give you a feel for the actual questions and working through them. Let me give you an example. I have a set of my practice exams here. This is a big book. It's 3 separate practice exams. This is the book. Huge 370 pages in this book of nothing but questions and answers. That's the only thing in this book is questions and answers. I'll take you through one of these. So here's a question directly from my first exam. Question number 9 asks, a network connection in the conference room was installed years ago and there's no documentation for the cable run. Connecting a device to the cable results in a successful Ethernet connection, so the other end of the cable should terminate somewhere in the wiring closet. Which of these tools would be the best choice to find the other end of the network connection? Is it cable tester, tone generator, multimeter, or crimper? So you think about what your answer might be. You can make a note, maybe pop open a notepad and make a note of what you think the answer is. Or you can look at the answers. I've got links right here on the right side where you can either look at the answer right away on Quick Answer, or you can go to the details on page 42. We're going to, instead of flipping through to page 42, because this is digital, we simply click the details. It takes us to page 42, shows us the answer again. It says the answer is B, tone generator, and gives you an answer why that's the right answer. We give you an explanation of why that's the right answer. Perhaps even better, I give you the incorrect answers, and I explain for each incorrect answer why that answer was incorrect. So this is one where even if you get it wrong, you're learning something about why you got it wrong, and next time you're going to get it right, to have those things there. I also include at the bottom of this a QR code and a link, if you're digital, that takes you to the video that discusses the topic that was part of the question. So if you've gone through it, I don't know why that's the right answer, I got it wrong, let me learn more about this, you click the button, and it either, in fact, open your phone right now. The QR code will work if you're watching this. Just point your phone. Don't have to take a picture. Point your camera right at that with your phone, and it will ask you if you want to go to the web page. That's how easy it is. That's so simple to have this here. And of course, if you have the physical book, all the QR codes are in here as well. So you can pop open the book, find the QR code that's associated with the answer that you're looking for, and you can pull that answer up directly from the book as well. So you've got different ways to do that. That is my practice exam. I wanted to create a set of exams that would be the most comprehensive practice exams in the industry. And I've never seen anything else that had all of those different features inside of it. These are the practice exams I wish I had when I was ready to take my exam. You can see all of this on my website. Have a look at the demo. I've got a video of this also there. Go to professormesser.com/core1PE. That's professormesser.com/core1PE, CORE number 1 PE for Core 1 practice exam. There's also links on the website. You'll see those things there to have all of that. You can get both a digital version of this or a physical version of this. And if you get the physical version, I give you the digital one for free. So while you're waiting for me to ship this to you, you'll be able to receive that. So plenty to look at there. Hopefully that's something that can help you as you're going through your studies and ready to take the exam, and test yourself to see if that's available for you as well. Let's do some more Q&A, shall we? I've got another multiple choice question for you. We'll go through here, and the next question asks, a technician working inside of a desktop computer a technician is working inside of a desktop computer to troubleshoot a faulty Molex connection. Which of the following is most likely associated with this connector? Is it a video adapter, cooling fans, internet connection, USB interfaces, or wireless network? A technician is working inside of a desktop computer to troubleshoot a faulty Molex connection. Which of the following is most likely associated with this connector? Is it a video adapter, cooling fans, internet connection, USB interfaces, or wireless network? If you think you know the answer, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Really great way to do that. Hopefully that can help you as you go through this. This is one where if you're anyone who's trying to work through these questions and figure out the details, go through it step by step, go through each single question, see if you can throw out some of the answers, see if you can focus on what those happen to be. See if you can lock it in. And no Googling. I see what you're doing. I'm looking at the numbers as it's going through. No Googling to have this here. That's not what you want to do. Let's have that functionality. So feel free to go through that link. You'll be able to break down what all of those happen to be. A technician is working inside of a desktop computer to troubleshoot a faulty Molex connection. Which of the following is most likely associated with this connector? Maybe you know what the answer is. If you think you do, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. I have all of those details. Oh, I can't wait to see what it happens to be as we go through the details of this. Whenever I start breaking these down and trying to figure it out myself, I really like to really encapsulate a two-step process with these questions because I think that's what you're going to get on your exam. It's never going to be straightforward. It's going to be you have to know one thing, and then how do you get to this other thing? So I'm not asking you what a Molex connection is, but I want you to know how it's used. That's a very common theme on the exam. Let's see how you did with the theme of this question. See if you answered it on the exam. Now, a technician is working inside of a desktop computer to troubleshoot a faulty Molex connector. Which of the following is most likely associated with this connection? And of course, we got the weird percentages again. Here we go. How'd we do? Well, 70% of you said cooling fans. I should have guessed 70 again. I missed an opportunity. 22% of you said a video adapter is what you would use. That's a good number, 22%. Down to 5% said USB interfaces, and then 1% apiece said internet connection and wireless network. Nobody was thinking networking with this. Well, let's talk about a Molex connection. You may have seen these before. If you've been working with computers, I don't know, anywhere in the last 25 years, you've probably run across one or two of these somewhere in there. And you'll still have them in a number of different computers because they are pretty useful for certain things. The Molex connector company made this. The most common version of this is made by AMP, a mate in lock. Why don't we call it the AMP mate in lock? Because Molex sounds so much easier, doesn't it? To say what that is. This is a power connector, and it provides power for 12 volt and 5 volt, which is getting increasingly rare to see inside of a computer these days. We're usually plugging this in these days. The only thing left in our computer that might use a Molex connector is, well, storage devices, SATA devices. They don't have these any longer. Optical drives. Do we even have optical drives anymore? No. You probably find one or two out there. You probably find maybe Molex is connecting to that one. Fans is certainly used. Fans is probably the most common use of these days, although many motherboards have fan connectors, little 4-pin connectors, 3 or 4-pin connectors on there that work as well. So the Molex connection is one that is probably most associated with fans. Let's see the different options that we have here to go through. We have here that is a video adapter. Well, video adapters have their own type of connection because it's usually a PCIe, PCI Express plus additional power for the PCI Express bus. So it's not used for video adapters. You never find a video adapter with a Molex connector on it. 70, the cool internet connection and wireless network, we can throw those out. Those don't use Molex at all. USB interfaces, 5% said USB, but most USB interfaces are powered right off the motherboard. They don't need additional power. They don't need external power connections from your power supply. The motherboard's able to handle those just fine. And cooling fans is really the only option left here. 70% of you said cooling fans. That is the right answer. That's the one you'll run into, is those cooling fan type connections. They really do come in handy if you don't have either cooling fans that will plug into those 3 or 4-pin connectors in the motherboard, or maybe your motherboard doesn't have a power connection for fans. Some don't. Some motherboards have fan controllers built in. which are nice, especially if you have fans that will run at different speeds. Then your motherboard can adjust how much air it needs to go through to keep things cool. So it's kind of nice to have that. Molex connectors don't do that. It's always the same speed as it's running. So kind of a disadvantage to be able to do that. But if that's your only option, then it's better at least cool it than to have something that may be a variable speed. So that is the right answer here. If you answered B, cooling fans, you got this one absolutely right. Let's do another question. I have another multiple choice question for you. This question asks, a system administrator needs to modify the amount of RAM associated with a VM. Which of the following manages this configuration option? Is it hypervisor, Intel VT, emulator, dual channel memory, or guest OS? A system administrator needs to modify the amount of RAM associated with a VM. Which of the following manages this configuration option? Is it hypervisor, Intel VT, emulator, dual channel memory, or guest OS? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Have those things there. Maybe you know what this one happens to be. Lock in. Let's see if you do happen to know what this is. I notice when the numbers start going very fast, people really think they know what it is. They're locking it in and having those there. So maybe you do know what this one is as you're going through. These are all new questions, so you've never heard me ask this question before, or at least not this exact question. And it's not one you can easily Google either. So not one you can figure out, at least not this short amount of time. And it's not that we're running that level of urgency with this. This is just practice, right? In fact, you kind of want to get some of these wrong. You want to hit questions and things you've never heard or seen before so that hopefully we learn something. It would be kind of boring if we all got 100% as we all went through this, and not to have this here. The chat rooms folks are asking, when I say Core 1 or Core 2, I'm referring to the 2 A+ exams. This is a new nomenclature that they're using this time. The 221,001 exam is called the Core 1 exam. The 221,002 exam is called the Core 2 exam. Why they decide to use Core 1 and Core 2, I have no idea. It seems to only complicate things. We were doing just fine calling it the 221,001 and the 221,002. I guess maybe they thought it'd be nice to call it something other than a bunch of numbers, right? Core 1 and Core 2. There you go. That's what those two things are. There's no difference. Core 1 is the 221,001. Core 2 is the 221,002. That's it. Whenever we say that, they're just interchangeable words. There's no difference between them. It's exactly the same thing where we're just using two different terms to refer to exactly the same test. That's what that is. So Core 1 is the 221,001. Core 2 is the 221,002. That's what those two things are. We'll break down more of this in the after show if we'd like to hear me say that 10 more times, which we don't. A system administrator needs to modify the amount of RAM associated with a VM. Which of the following manages this configuration option? Is it hypervisor, Intel VT, emulator, dual channel memory, or guest OS? Let's refresh the screen now before I reveal the answer, and let's see if it works. The answer does work now. The answer, 78% of you say the answer is hypervisor. 10% of you say it's emulator. 6% said Intel VT. 4% said dual channel memory. And 2% said guest OS. Those different options that are available. Well, the answer here, 78%. That's a pretty solid number. If you're somebody who's worked with a hypervisor before, then you've worked with a virtual machine manager that allows you to configure all of the different settings for your virtual machines. So if you need to allocate CPU, memory, drive space, graphics memory, and all the different little settings that go along with it, this is what you would use, is this hypervisor to have this here. Whenever you see that, and 78% of you said, yep, that's exactly what I would do with that. I would use that hypervisor to be able to make those things happen. All of your hardware management, or the world of virtual talking to the world of physical, is all managed through that hypervisor. So there's always going to be a hypervisor. It may be one that runs as a client in your Windows machine, or it may be its own operating system all by itself. There's a lot of different ways to implement a hypervisor and be able to have these virtual machines to be able to work. And that is the right answer here as well, the hypervisor, to have all of those details and be able to work through them. The other options here, 10% of you said an emulator. An emulator is one that is running code that was not originally designed to run on that architecture. And that's not something we commonly do. Commonly, we are running virtual machines on an Intel platform, and the virtual machines were always designed to run on an Intel platform. Very rarely would you run a virtual machine with an emulator that's running on a different type of platform. It's certainly not the place you would be able to work through that. Not something you would commonly see, but there are programs out there that do emulation so that they're able to do that. The other options here, Intel VT, the virtualization technology is what that stands for. That is the Intel technology that you would enable within the Intel CPU that performs a number of these virtualization tasks in the hardware of the processor itself. So a lot of the things that are pushed off outside of software go directly to the hardware of the CPU. It's so much easier for the CPU to manage that and be able to manage it very quickly. So both Intel and AMD have technologies built into their CPUs that do that. Some things you do with virtual machines require that it have that Intel VT in the processor itself to be able to work. So an important piece there. Dual channel memory is a type of memory configuration on a motherboard that allows you to get much faster throughput to the memory by using two separate modules rather than one single module. Two channels of memory. Sometimes it's triple channel memory. Use three separate modules to be able to increase the throughput of the memory. And if you ever deal with dual channel memory, you should always be using it. If you're not using it already, check your motherboard specifications. You may be able to speed your computer up by simply using two modules instead of a single one in your computer. That doesn't even make sense if you think about it, but then once you break down the architecture of the dual and triple channel architecture, you realize, okay, I see why it's so much faster now. And lastly, the guest operating system, that is the operating system running as the virtual machine. It does not have control over how much memory it gets. The hypervisor is the thing that manages that, and that is not the right answer either. The right answer is the hypervisor. If you answered A, that is the right answer. Correct. On a lot of you, 78% of you got that one absolutely correct. If you're watching these videos for continuing education unit credit, one of the things that you'll do to be able to earn that is to follow these instructions. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link. Click that Contact Us link. A form will come up. In that form, put your name, put your email address. Make sure your email address is correct because I email these back to you. Not everybody does that. That's why I keep mentioning it. In the subject line, put this is the August 2020 A+ study group, maybe Core 1. Just put Core 1. I'll know what it is. And then on a line by itself, in the body of that message, put the word hypervisor. That is the super secret code word of the month. And then if you'd like to put anything else in the body of that message, I read through every single one of these. I'm not able to respond back to all of these that I do get, but I do read through all of them just so you are aware. This is one, if you follow all of those and you hit the button to send that, I will get that. It'll go into a special folder in my mailbox. It takes me about a week to turn these things around, but I do get them back to you. And then eventually you will get an email from me that says, yes, you watch this. I dubbed the one CEU. And you get a webinar category CEU for watching this. So those are your instructions. Go to the Contact Us link, put your name, put your email address, put that this is the Core 1 August A+ study group. And then put the super secret code word of hypervisor. Now, if it's not exactly what I said or exactly the way I said, I give you a little bit of leeway, but you have to at least follow the broad instructions I just gave. You can't send me a message directly and say, hey, here it is. Nope, that doesn't work. Following those directions is part of earning the CEU. That way I know you listened to this and that you were able to follow all of those instructions, and then you'll earn a CEU. So pretty useful to have that. Let's do another question. We got some time. The next question on our list, so glad I get to ask this one, which asks, which of the following would be the most likely cause of video artifacts on a display projector? Which of the following would be the most likely cause of video artifacts on a display projector? Would it be a bad bulb? Would it be an outdated BIOS? Would it be bad Ethernet cable? Would it be a faulty video driver? Or would it be outdated OS patches? Which of the following would be the most likely cause of video artifacts on a display projector? Is it a bad bulb, outdated BIOS, a bad Ethernet cable, a faulty video driver, or outdated OS patches? You think you know the answer. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you happen to know. Now, there's many things that could cause video artifacts. Lots. In fact, the thing that I would think of immediately that would cause a video artifact is not in this list. They do this on the exam all the time. The thing that you know is your number one, that's what it is. If you're on Family Feud, this was the number one answer. It's not in the list. And it's sometimes, if you're not expecting that, it can be frustrating. So be ready for this on the exam. That, wait, the thing I would choose isn't there. The first troubleshooting step I would choose isn't there. But that wasn't the question. The question isn't what would you do? The question was, which of the following would be the most likely cause? So that's the important part of this, is knowing which of these listed here you have to choose from. And sometimes you don't have all of these options available. Sometimes you only have a limited number of things you can do. So there is a little bit of a real world to this, but you have to choose from what they give you. Each question is its own little world. Can't think into outside the scope of what information they give you. They give you everything you need to know in the question to answer it. So they're not expecting you to go outside the scope of the question. So that's another good one. And then you only have a certain number of options available. You must choose from those certain number of options. So make sure you're aware of those to have this here. Very important. For those of you in the chat room asking about some of my previous courses, so those of you that have followed me through the years, I have an A+ course from the 600 series, the 700 series, the 800 series, the 900 series. This is my 5th series of A+ videos out there. That is my 1000 series. Don't go back and look at the old stuff. It's not going to help you. Always look at the latest version. The courses that I create for that series are complete and follow all of the exam objectives. And they're a little more specific every year to what you need to know. I get better at this every time. So don't go look at 900 series videos. That is played out. You don't want that. Do not do that. It's old. 20% of what you need isn't there. A lot of stuff you don't need is in it. So you end up learning 30 or 40% of things you don't need or is not there. That's a losing situation. You will lose right there. You'll fail your exam by just studying the 900 series stuff. Don't do that. Bad idea. So thank you for mentioning that in the chat room. That's an important consideration. Make sure all of your study materials match the version of the exam you're planning to take. And if they don't match, go out and get new study materials. Very, very, very important to have that. So make sure you go through all of that. Pretty important to break those things down. So hopefully you're familiar with what that would be. Now, some of you are asking the right questions here, which is, what the heck are you talking about? What is a video artifact? We'll talk about that in just a moment too. This is a great opportunity to break this down, because I think some of us may not even know what that is. There's a reason I asked this question, because somebody asked me this week, what are you talking about? So I thought, okay, well, let's do a what are you talking about question, and this is it. Let's break down what these answers are. Let me quickly do our regular refresh. There we go. And the question asks, which of the following would be the most likely cause of video artifacts on a display projector? Is it a bad bulb, outdated BIOS, bad Ethernet cable, faulty video driver, or outdated OS patches? 62% of you say a faulty video driver. 33% of you, as I was suspecting, have said bad bulb. I'll tell you why in just a moment. 3% said bad Ethernet cable, 1% said outdated BIOS, and 1% said an outdated OS patch. So let's talk about video artifacts. An artifact is when you're seeing something on the screen that is an unusual graphic that's there. If you have a bad video cable, you'll get an artifact. You ever have those bad HDMI cables and it breaks, and you're watching something and it keeps stop, and it's blocking? That's an artifact. That's giving blocks on the screen. You're losing the audio. It's not connected well. It's a mess. And this is a pretty good, that is video artifact. That's a very extreme example of a video artifact right there. So it's a blank screen, but there's all this noise and garbage on the screen. That's what that is. That is artifacting as it is happening. So when you get into those situations, there's only so many things that might cause this. I always think it's a cable. Always check the cables first thing. That wasn't on our list. Cable wasn't one of those. But you can also find that the software, the video driver that runs your video card could be the problem. It could be the video card itself is having a hardware problem. That's another good example of when you might get artifacting on there. So if we go through the list of all the things that are here, a bad bulb, an outdated BIOS, a bad Ethernet cable, faulty video driver, or outdated OS patches, the only thing in this list that would really cause artifacting is indeed the faulty video driver. And of course, I've given you 3 things. It could be the cable, it could be the card itself, the video card itself has a hardware problem, or it could be the driver that runs the card has a bug and it's putting junk on the screen where there shouldn't be junk on the screen. Highly technical description of what's going on. 33% of you said bad bulb, and there are questions on the internet that point you down this road. And I think many of you probably have seen these questions that tell you, oh, artifacts, bad bulb. Bad bulb doesn't cause artifacts. Bad bulb will never cause an artifact. I won't say never. I've never seen a bad bulb cause an artifact, because a bulb, if it goes bad, is either the bulb's very bright, it's just shining a light through usually some type of LCD or other type of projection device. So it's shining the light through. That's all the bulb does. It's like a flashlight. So it's shining a light through. If the bulb goes bad, then the light turns off. It's a binary situation most of the time. A bad bulb is either working, a bad bulb's not working. Is it working? Is it not working? So you're either seeing video or you're not seeing video. That's it. So it's like a light bulb. Have you ever been in a room and the light bulb is either, the light bulb is putting different lighting on your, no, that rarely happens. The bulb is either on or it's off. Sometimes, I guess very rarely, you could run into a situation perhaps where the bulb would be diminished, where it would be maybe not as bright. That could be a bad bulb as well. So maybe you've got a very bright bulb, no light at all, or maybe somewhere in the middle. But it would not cause your video display to look like that. Has nothing to do with a bulb. And I don't know why there was this. One of these things about the internet is when one bad question gets out, it sort of gets copied everywhere. And we all start thinking, oh, it's bad. That's what a bad bulb. Yeah. And it somehow becomes part of the whole thing. But it's not. There's no way a bulb causes an artifact. It doesn't work there. That's not how bulbs work. That's not how light works. So no, it would not be a bad bulb. That does not cause artifacts. It's not the situation. It would not be some leftover. There's no residue. There's no thing there. It's not a bad bulb. It's not. Don't do that. It's the same for the same reason that Cat 5 absolutely runs gigabit Ethernet, that there's no such thing as a layer 3 switch. There is no case where a bad bulb will be causing an artifact on your display. There you go. It's one of those things that kind of works through there. If you answered faulty video driver, that is the right answer. That's the only one on this list that could possibly or most likely cause a video artifact. Outdated BIOS, if you're booting your computer with your basic input-output system, that has nothing to do with your video output causing artifacts. That's not our issue. A bad Ethernet cable might cause our computer to not transfer data over the Ethernet network very well, but it would not be able to cause artifacts on our screen. That has nothing to do with Ethernet. That's your video. And outdated OS patches, I guess potentially sort of kind of, but we don't really associate OS patches with the video generally. That is the case. Now, it would only be a faulty video driver. See, I've messed up the whole chat room now because I said there's no such thing as a layer 3 switch. That's right. There's a layer 2 switch and a layer 3 router. That's right. There's no such thing as a layer 3 switch. That's what I mean by that. There are certainly boxes that you can buy that the manufacturer calls a layer 3 switch, but it does not. There's no such thing as that. It's a term. It's kind of weird term that I know it triggered everybody. Everybody's messed up. That's okay. I tell you what, just for that, we're going to do another question. I know we're top of the hour. We're into overtime. We're going to do one more. Let's just churn through this next question, and that'll be our little bonus here. So we'll step through this next question, which asks, an iPhone user would like to constantly maintain a backup of their mobile phone using the existing cellular network connection. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Would it be Google Drive, iTunes, Time Machine, Backup and Restore, or iCloud? An iPhone user would like to constantly maintain a backup of their mobile phone using the existing cellular network connection. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Would it be Google Drive, iTunes, Time Machine, Backup and Restore, or iCloud? If you think you know the answer, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock it in. Lock in your answer. Be able to know what those happen to be. See if you know what they are. See if you're familiar with these technologies. You may run into some of these as you're working through those. I think whenever I start working through all of these things, I'm going through this list myself thinking, well, would it be one of these? Could it be one of that? It could very well be one of that. This might be useful. So as you go through and figure this out, take a guess, figure out those details. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. A lot of you have locked in that answer already. I think a lot of you might know what this one is. If you've never worked with an iPhone, though, you might not. But you have to know this for the exam. The exam expects you to know how to manage and troubleshoot iOS devices. It expects you to be able to manage and troubleshoot Android devices. So you've got a lot of options. Now, at least this is a good example. If you were studying the 900 series things, it would expect you to troubleshoot and manage Windows Phone, which doesn't exist anymore. So it's a good example of why you should not use the 900 series. Always use the latest to be able to have this. Be very familiar with what these happen to be. Let's see what you answered. We will do our traditional refreshing of the screen. Boy, will I be putting a ticket in. We're done here and working through it and trying to figure out the details. Whenever I start trying to get through the details of this, it's a good one to work through. How did we do with this? 87% of you said you would use iCloud to do this. And figure this out. 6% of you said no, use the other the iTunes, to do this. Only 3% of you chose the macOS backup utility Time Machine. Thought there would be more of you choosing that. Only 3% of you chose the Windows utility Backup and Restore, and less than 1% of you chose Google Drive, which would be the right answer not to choose that, by the way, to have this here and figuring out what these happen to be. Hopefully you're familiar with these technologies, or if you're not familiar with these technologies, you should get familiar with these technologies. Synchronizing to the cloud is an important part of this, and knowing how to synchronize to the cloud depending on what you're working with is important. If you have an Apple device, then you're running the iOS operating system, and built into Apple's iOS operating system is iCloud, which is remarkable. It just constantly updates. Everything on your phone is constantly saved into the cloud. That means if you lose your phone, if you break your phone, if you hit your phone and suddenly it's not working all of a sudden and it's a black screen, it's dead, you just go out and get a new phone, log into iCloud, and it just downloads everything, and it's like nothing happened. It's just magic. It's now all there. Well, of course, we have the same type of thing on the Android side. You put it into your Google account. It stores everything in the Google Cloud. Similar idea. And of course, you can specify, oh, don't save my mail out there. Don't save my pictures out there. Don't save my videos out there. You got other things you can do with that. But Apple iOS, if we're working with an iPhone, then we're working with Apple's iOS. And the iPhone user would absolutely use iCloud to do that. Very useful to have that there. Google Drive is what we would use, or at least the Google Cloud is what we would use with Android. So that would not be the right answer. We have an iPhone in this case. iTunes is the client that you can run on your workstation to perform local backups of your phone. So you can either over a wireless network or plug it into USB and transfer data into a file that is local on your computer, because some people don't have the ability to to use iCloud in that way, to use it as a backup because they have limited amount of communication or can't communicate that way. So iTunes is a great one to use, but it will not constantly maintain a backup using the existing cellular network connection. You have to be either on the local wireless network or plugged in via USB and save the files on a local computer. Time Machine is the utility in Mac OS that will back up your Mac OS files. That's what I use to be able to back up what I'm using. And then, or my face is, there we go. And Backup Restore is the utility you would use in Windows to back up your Windows operating system. All these are backup type technologies, but the only one that fits into our list is iCloud. If you answered iCloud, that is exactly the correct answer, and you got that one absolutely right. Well, all the questions we've done today come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. If you don't have these exam objectives, you're doing yourself a tremendous disservice. They're absolutely free. They tell you everything you need to know for the exam, and that's where I got all these questions from. That's where my entire course came from. Make sure you download the objectives. I have a link out to CompTIA's website where you can get these by going to professormesser.com/objectives, and you'd be able to have those there as well. We do one of these study groups every month. We actually do multiples of these per month, but we do a Core 1 study group once a month. Our next Core 1 study group is in September the 8th is our next Core 1 study group. We have a Core 2 study group on Thursday, so 2 days from now on August the 6th, or if you come back in September, on September the 10th. We also have Network Plus study groups and Security Plus study groups throughout the month as well. If you want to know when our next live event is going to be, you go to professormesser.com/calendar, and you can see exactly when the next live event will be. All the times are there. I've got a time converter for where you happen to be. You'll see all of those listed there at professormesser.com/calendar. Well, we've gone through an hour of Q&A. We've gone through an hour plus of Q&A. We fit a little bit more in, but we've got more questions and answers, except now you're going to be asking me the questions in the after show. Stick around for that. Don't forget about the practice exams out at professormesser.com/1001success. Not just the practice exams, but I have course notes there and plenty more to look at. Find it all at professormesser.com/1001success. You can also follow us on Twitter for your daily pop quiz questions, YouTube to subscribe and smash that button. Doesn't even sound right when I say it. And professormesser.com/Instagram if you like those pretty pictures along with your questions of the day. That's kind of a nice thing to do, and I like doing it. So have a look at it at professormesser.com/Instagram. And of course, on Amazon's another way to help us. Don't forget at professormesser.com/Instagram or /Amazon. Can't really help us at Amazon unless you go to professormesser.com/Amazon. Stick around for the next hour. We'll do our after show where you're calling in and talking to me. Thanks for being here in hour number 1. We love doing it, and we couldn't do it without you. We will see you next time on the Core 1 A+ study group. Well, now let's see if I can click the buttons that will make the rest of this work. I think I can. I now need to call in so that you can call in. So stand by for just a moment, and I will convert things over, and we will talk about a number of different things. Let's start the show. Let's click a button here. I have to click more things on my screen. There's no producer here. It's just me. So I am producing and connecting and doing all of this myself. It only takes a moment, though, for us to go through and click all of these things. I'm going to click this and type this in, and it says,
enter your 6-digit PIN.
I certainly will. And I'll put in that 6-digit PIN. And the nice lady says,
welcome, Professor Messer.
Well, thank you. What a nice lady who says welcome. Now that she has said that, the phone lines are open. And if you hit the right button, you'll be able to see the phone lines are there. If you're in the continental United States, you can call in at a toll-free number. Costs you nothing, 855-785-7545. That's a toll-free number west of the Rockies, 855-785-RJ45. If you're outside of the continental United States, you can still call in for free if you use Skype, because this is a toll-free number, and you can use Skype without any Skype minutes. Put a +1 at the beginning, though. If you do that on Skype, put a +1, 855-785-7545, and you can call in there as well. A couple of questions from the chat room. Since the Security Plus 601 is coming out in November Am I currently busy with creating 601 content? Like you don't know, brother. There's all kinds of content. There is so much information on the 601 objectives. That's correct. Will my study groups be 501 material still? Yes. The 601, even though the 601 comes out in November, there's still a lot of people that will be taking 501. So sometime between November and July of next year, we will be converting over to the 601 study groups. It probably will not be in November because I don't think a lot of people will be jumping on that train right away. But we will be able to give, eventually it'll convert over and we'll do 601. We'll just flip a switch and that month we'll start with 601 material. But 50% of the 601 exam is content from the 501. So there's still a good overlap of material. 50% though. So there's a huge amount of new material on the 601 to go through. So that's an important thing to consider as well. In the future, will I do videos / study groups on Linux? Linux and Linux Plus is on my very, very long list. It's not the top of my list. I would love to be able to do Linux content, but it's not the top of my list. Probably not the thing I'm doing next. But hopefully, maybe I will be able to do that. And also in the chat room, probably one of my most asked questions these days, are there any updates on when my Core 2 practice exam books will be out? Today we talked about the Core 1 practice exam book. What about Core 2? There isn't one yet. Well, it's busy being worked on. I'm currently on a live stream at the moment, so I'm not writing, but every moment I'm not on doing something, I am writing in that book. Most of it's actually done. There's about, I won't say how much time is left, but I expect next month you'll have a book at some point. I know that we're at the beginning of August, but into sometime in September, I hope to have this thing out. It could get pushed. It could be after that. I probably won't be before that, but it could be after that. I won't give you an exact date, but we're in the final stretches of this. All the questions have been written. The answers have not been written. So that's why we're writing. We're busy. It's all fresh. It's all brand new. We're busy writing. At the same time, also creating content for the new Security Plus. So there's plenty going to have that there. Do I cover anything on Novell? Well, you need to look at my new Novell 4.11 SMP exam course, where we talk about converting from your thin net 10 base 2 connection to a new twisted pair 10 base T. Make sure you look at our videos for that as well. Pretty exciting stuff. You're going to want to be able to do that. We talk all about the differences in moving from an NLM environment to something that is non-NLM. Let's go to the phones. We'll go to the 818 area code. If I click the button right there, it is. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller.
Oh, hi. Wow. I'm the first caller.
You are the first caller. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you? Fire away.
I have a quick question.
Hit me.
So I was in your last stream, and so my tech time, I got most of your questions that you asked right, so that gives me good confidence.
Nice.
The questions are very close to the test. I've used some other material as well. My question is, this is going to be my third time taking the 1001. You have to wait 14 days after your second attempt.
Oh boy.
I really obviously want to pass it the third time. And my question is, I've been studying hard, taking some other practice tests. I'm even using Pocket Prep, which is actually the questions are very close to the test as well. My main question is, what is some last minute advice for anybody who's also in the chat who's taking the test? I'm taking it Thursday. So what's some last minute advice?
This is probably a top question we get, because especially I've been in the same situation you have been, where I've already taken an industry exam I took 2 times, and it took me until the 3rd time through to pass this particular industry exam. For those of you wondering which one it is, it was, I don't know, 20 years ago. It was an exam called the CNX, Certified Network Expert. I had passed the CNX on Ethernet. I had passed the CNX on Token Ring. I had passed the CNX quite literally on FDDI, but I was not someone who had done a lot of work with cabling, and there was a CNX on cabling that I was trying to pass, and it took me until the 3rd time through to pass it. For the A+ exams, I highly recommend kind of a 4-step process. So you've got the exam objectives already. We'll just assume you have that. Those are the most important study guide you can use, or at least checklist that you can use, because it will point out the things that maybe you are not ready for, you don't understand completely, and you can kind of focus on particular topics. But there's 4 things you really need to be able to study well. It's make sure you get a good book, sometimes more than one helps. You make sure you get a good set of videos to watch, because sometimes seeing a demonstration of these things is important. Make sure you get enough hands-on on these technologies, because running your own ping command, running your own directory command, running these commands at the command line yourself, I think teach you in a different way. They solidify things in your brain in a different way than a book or a video ever can. And then the 4th thing I always mention is get some very good practice exams to go through. The ones that you've gone through are very good practice exams, so you've got the right set of things available. Those are the 4 things. So if you have those 4 resources, you at least have the best possibility of going through these exams. You've gone through this twice now. You've kind of got a feel for the experience. You understand the terms or the nomenclature or the style of questions that they ask. You've probably seen a couple of these already pop up more than once on the exam because you've taken it twice. But one of the things I tell people to do is now just go through the exam objectives with a fine-tooth comb. And if you can go to a topic on the exam objectives and explain that objective to somebody, then you've got it. Then go to the next one. If you can explain that one to somebody, then you've got it. Go to the next one. So I think that's one of the best things you can do is test yourself by seeing if you can teach that concept to someone else. And if you can't, or you get caught up on that concept, or you feel like I don't have it studied, that's when to circle and get the cramming in before you walk into the exam room again.
Okay. I appreciate that very much. That helps a lot. Yeah, I've taken those other tests. One thing, would you agree? I did the PBQs. Did them right away. Would you agree to maybe take them, just check mark them and do them last? There's another person who said that, because I also got the Dion training practice course, as well as doing your videos. And one of the things he said was to do the PBQs last. I guess because I will give you more time, do the multiple choice first.
It's kind of a personal preference. I'm also of the strategy of doing them last. And here's my justification of doing them last. For those of you who haven't seen the exam or sat for the exam before, the first handful of questions you get are not multiple choice questions. They're performance-based questions, PBQs, we call them. Those performance-based questions can be drag and drop. There can be multiple steps you have to go through. They're generally very time-consuming questions. And what happens is if you're taking your exam for the first time, you'll end up spending so much time on these questions at the beginning that you kind of forget that you have another 75 multiple choice questions to take in that 90-minute time frame. So that's why I tell people jump over them, go to the multiple choice questions from a time management perspective. Also, another important point of doing that is I find that going through the multiple choice questions tend to jog my brain on topics that are talked about on the performance-based questions. So it's a little bit of a way to use the exam to give you questions on the exam. So I think going through the multiple choice allows me to kind of recollect all my synapses, get them all firing on those topics. And then when I circle back to the performance-based questions, maybe some of the topics in the performance-based, I've already covered some of that in the multiple choice questions that we went through. That's my idea behind it. There are some people I've talked to, though, that say, nope, I just want to get them out of the way. I churn through them the very first thing. That's their strategy, is to get them done and finished, and then they go off to the rest of the exam. I don't know that either one of those strategies is better or worse than the other, because we don't know how much of those performance-based questions are graded towards the final score. We don't know what the weighting of those questions happen to be. There have been some people that say, I think I failed all the performance-based questions. I think I did horribly on the performance-based questions, and I still passed the exam. Now, may not be that way for everybody, but that was a good example that maybe putting the emphasis on performance-based questions is not the best thing you should do, but maybe just do the best you can and then get the rest of those questions done, because the multiple choice would at least give you a chance for getting some correct points on the exam. It's a personal preference, but I'm kind of the idea of skipping over and coming back later.
I agree, because after taking it twice, I feel like maybe the first time I took too much time on the PBQs and then didn't leave myself, and then I had to rush through the multiple choice. And then the second time had almost 3 exact same PBQs. So I actually okay, I could get these right, and I went a little faster. But I feel like this time I'm gonna flag them and go right and do the multiple choice first, because I think that's, after doing it twice, I think that's almost like you said. I think it's better for me. I think it might be the better strategy to do it last. To give yourself, because if you go through the multiple choice first, like you said,
there's no wrong way to do this, as long as you're able to answer all the questions in the time that have been allocated. Find the way that works for you, and find the way that you think works for getting the answer to what is being asked, and you're going to do fine.
Thank you so much for these videos. It's great. This has actually helped me out a lot, and I know I'm going to pass this time.
Best of luck, and I think you are too. Let us know how it goes.
I will. I'll be back on when you do your 1002 to start looking at that.
Sounds good. We will see you on Thursday. Thank you, sir.
Bye.
It can be frustrating to go through these exams and not be able to pass it on the other side. I remember going through this cabling exam thinking I had it. I walk in and it just killed me. And having to go through it twice and not pass. And I'm wondering, do I even want to do this? Do I even want to go the third time and figure this out? I'm glad I did, because not only did I get that 4th CNX to put next to my name, which in the particular job I was in was pretty important, because I was working for a company that made protocol analyzers, and knowing about the cabling was pretty important. But it was one where I feel like I learned something about the topic, and I feel like I learned something about taking exams, which has really helped throughout my career. So don't ever give up on those. There's always a good reason to try to take it and pass that exam again, and work it through. How much was the test? I have no idea. I mean, we're talking 20 years ago for the CNX exam. Back then it was $2.50. We took our exam. I don't remember. Let's go back to the phone calls. Go to Central Florida. That is still there. 407 area code is hung up. They've had it with me. That was it. Never mind. The hurricane went through. It was nothing, and they got tired of me waiting, apparently. So let's go up north, 978 area code. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from? Caller, 978 from Gloucester.
Hello.
Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? I'm hearing a little bit of echo there. We may have to put you back in the queue. Why don't we do that? We'll stick you back in the queue. We'll give it another shot so you figure out those details. Let's go up around my neck of the woods into Florida, 850. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Oh, wow. Hi, my name is Zachary. This is my first time calling, so didn't expect to get on this time.
Hey, Zachary. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Hey, so I got a question for you about covering particulars of what I really need to know for the exam. And why I'm asking is because I'm getting out of the military in under a year, and my current job has nothing to do with IT, but I know that it's what I want to do.
Great.
And I actually used the link on your website to get that A+ for Dummies book. And it's going over a lot of particulars. Currently, like, for example, the CPU socket. Do I need to know how many pins every connector has, and everything dating all the way back to SEC sockets, and which particulars use that? Like, I know not to learn trivia. Like, I don't need to know what AGP means every single time, but like, how much is too much?
Wow, that is an interesting book. For those of you that have read through the exam objectives before, or maybe not, if you look through the exam objectives, there is a total of 0 CPU models listed on the exam objectives. And by 0, I mean none. There's no CPU models listed on the exam objectives. If you look through the exam objectives, there is exactly 0 sockets listed in the exam objectives. 0, none. There's no sockets and no CPUs on the exam objectives. And this is probably the thing that as someone who writes content so that people can pass this exam, these are the types of study materials that sometimes drive me crazy. I understand why some of them add some context to the scope of what they are teaching you so that they don't say your computer has a CPU. They kind of give you some examples of here's some types of CPUs. The problem is that if you go back and look at the exam objectives, there's not a list of any CPUs there. There's not a list of any socket types that are there. You don't need to know models or types of CPUs. You don't have to know cache sizes or the type of number of pins. You don't have to know any of those details. They do have on the exam types of connections. So you have to know what a PGA connection is. You need to know what an LGA connection is. But that is the extent of CPU. So as you go through these books, and every book does this to some degree, it's not specific to the one you got. Some are better than others, but all of them kind of go outside the scope of the exam, is get your exam objectives, match it up with what you're reading. And if you're reading something that's going outside the scope of the exam, you can just write a box across that. You can ignore it completely because they're not going to ask you what a TR4 socket is. I don't even know what that is. What is a TR? I don't know. Who bothers knowing these types of things? You have to know that certain motherboards and certain CPUs are compatible, and you need to get one that has LGA, and you know what that is, but that's the extent of it. You don't have to know anything about those to be able to work through them. Yeah, I guess it's Threadripper technology. So those are the things you watch out for. I think if you stick to the exam objectives, and I know I say that all the time on these study groups, is get the exam objectives, get the exam objectives, get the exam objectives. That's why I do that, because you will so often find books, practice exams, other study guides that go well outside the scope, and you end up, I've heard people tell me, I spent days studying how many pins are on all these different CPU models. Well, they're not going to ask you that. It's not even a part of the exam objectives. CompTIA doesn't care how many pins are on a TR4 socket because nobody does. That's why. There's not a lot of trivia on the exam. There are certainly things you need to memorize. There's not a lot of trivia. So if you're reading something and thinking, this seems a lot of detailed nonsense trivia, it might be. Go check your exam objectives and sync that up, and I think you'll figure out whether you need to know it or not.
All right, sweet. Thank you very much. That makes it seem a lot less daunting. I'm sorry?
I said that might save you some time, too. And that you're right. It does a little bit less daunting when you know you don't have to memorize pages of content.
Yeah, like I see these pages going on for I see these tables going on for a page or two at a time. I'm like, do I need to know all of this? So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And thank you for your time. Thank you.
Best of luck. I think some of that is kind of also a holdover because, as I mentioned, the 900 series exam had this big list of, I say a big list, it was probably 10 different sockets you had to memorize. It was ridiculous. Why do I need to? Nobody cares about how many pins are in a socket in an Intel 775. That's nobody cares. And then people writing the books, though, when they started getting these books out, the books are sort of a last minute thing. The exam objectives show up for the new version. They're on a tight time frame to get these to the publisher. It takes months to get these books published. And sometimes they just don't have time to remove all the old stuff. And I think that's why we see some of that in there, where they have those details in there. That's nothing you should run into when we do that type of thing. Let's try this 978 again. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller. Well, we gave it a shot.
Hello?
At least. That was one of those situations, I guess. Did we miss him right there at the end? We probably did. We'll try it back. We'll try to get you on. 734, though, is up. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi. Am I on?
You are on. What's your question?
Oh, hi, Professor Messer. I'm Joe. I'm actually calling from North Carolina, despite the Michigan area code.
Okay. Thanks, John.
I had a question on network protocols. This is going to be my first test that I'm taking, so I'm really trying to go all in with this. I have a tendency to learn better when I'm actually doing hands-on stuff, and for the life of me, I cannot remember the ports and the protocols. I can remember what the protocol names stand for or their abbreviations.
Yep.
But do you have any recommendations on, I don't know, maybe like setting up a virtual machine or something to get the hands-on to see what like RDP actually looks like in action? I tried using like Wireshark and looking at
Good.
packets as they came across,
Great.
but that was just way overkill.
That is a little much. It's kind of the matrix view. Everything's kind of hitting you, and it's all some weird language as it's going down the screen. If I had to do some hands-on with ports and protocols, I think you are almost there, though. This may be a case where you just have to use them in some way. And I think a good way to use them is to maybe set up firewalling for these. If you're using on your computer port 443, most of us remember port 80 and 443. This is a good example of doing some things. You've got a built-in firewall, for instance, in Windows. You've got a built-in firewall in other operating systems. And you can set up a blocking of a particular port. It can be down at the port level. And you may want to try setting up some rules that would block certain port numbers and then see if the programs that use those port numbers are able to work properly. I think understanding a little more about Wireshark is going to help you. I know it's a lot. It's kind of got a big learning curve, but if you can simply capture data, look through a packet, and then maybe do some basic filtering of that data, it might help you a bit. At least you'd be able to see the port numbers that are in use for the applications that you're using. It's worth the time to be able to at least learn that amount. And you don't have to know every feature within Wireshark because it's overwhelming. But if you can capture data, view the captured data, and then filter that captured data, there's three things. If you do those three things, you've got pretty much 90% of what you're going to be doing on Wireshark anyway. And then you'd be able to kind of sort through some of that and have a look at those numbers. It's just a matter of using those. This may be, and in fact, there's very few things on the A+ exam that you kind of have to learn individual things about, but that is probably one that you would run into, is learning flashcard-wise what is IMAP associated with an IMAP S, and then what do you do with it, I think is probably the most important part. I gave that example earlier. Those are the things I would focus on. Maybe that is something that a flashcard would work with, and maybe doing it in a firewall or Wireshark would be another secondary hands-on, see it in action, see what it's doing, kind of solidified in your brain as well. Those two things working together may be a good combination.
Awesome. Thank you for the suggestions.
Best of luck, Joe. And don't spend forever on those. If you don't get them, they're a small part of a small section of a much larger domain that is part of many domains on the 1001. Don't spend a week stuck on port numbers because you might get one question about them.
Oh, okay.
I
was just overthinking it then.
All about context. There's a whole lot more in the exam. You could be spending that time learning so many other things that you might be asked about on the exam. So everything should be in balance.
Okay. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate the call. That's one that I see a lot of people, especially on the Network Plus exam, they worry about doing IP subnetting. And IP subnetting can take a long time to kind of understand what's going on and learn some techniques and learn some shortcuts. And there's binary math involved, and it can take a little bit of time. And sometimes people spend way too much time on subnetting, and it turns out they get no questions on the exam on subnetting, or maybe one question on the exam on subnetting. Was it worth spending 2 weeks doing that? You could have learned something else and gotten other questions correct. So it's a balancing act. Do you need to know subnetting? Do you need to know about these port numbers? Yes, you do. But you also need to pass this exam. So it's a combination of things. Trust me, in your career, you will have plenty of time to do subnetting. There will be plenty of instances where you have to worry about port numbers. So it's not like I'm telling you never learn these things. You're going to learn them. But the the idea and the point and the direction of doing all this is we need to pass this exam. Let's go to 817. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, what's up? This is Alex. I'm calling from Dallas.
Hi, Alex.
I just had a few questions.
Hit me.
Not a few. What's it called? I have a lot of computer building experience in the past, and that kind of what made me wanted to start going in the A+.
Great.
And I was just wondering if I should sorry, I don't know if I should just kind of like skip over that part, or just not study it as much and kind of like study everything else.
The one thing you do have to watch out for on the A+ exam, and I see this mistake time and time again, is that people have been in the industry, including myself. When I took the A+ exam, I'd already been in the industry for over 15 years. I had worked as a field technician. I had done memory upgrades and hard drive installs and motherboard replacements and printer installations and repairs. And I was very competent with the operating system and the hardware. And then I opened up my A+ book and it started talking about the way memory works. And I thought, I've never learned this before. This is a concept I've never had to stop and think about how memory works. I plugged in the memory. I saw the memory numbers came up in my BIOS. They looked fine in the operating system. Everything worked okay, and I kept it moving. But there was actually a lot of interesting things happening under the surface with the memory that I just never learned. So you don't go into the exam thinking that you can take certain sections and not go through them because you know about hardware. Why go through the hardware section? Because there may be things in there that you don't know about that you've just never had time to go through and look at the details. Now, having gone through the experiences you've gone through, there is undoubtedly information in those exam objectives that you're absolutely familiar with. So my recommendation is to grab the exam objectives and just start checking things off. If you know about motherboards, I know what a motherboard is and what we would use it for and what connects to it. Okay, we can cross that one off our list. But you may run into a technology that you just don't use a lot. A good example is that printers. Laser printers is not something we tend to have in our home. A lot of us don't even have printers in our home. Well, printers is a big part of that hardware section, and we have to know about laser printers and dot matrix printers and inkjet printers and thermal printers and virtual printers and 3D printers. Certainly, we don't have all those printers in our house, so there may be things like that where we do need to take a little bit of extra time and go through them. But if you've already got some experience, those may be things you can check off pretty easily, and then you've covered at least that section. You're not going to be surprised when you sit down for the exam.
Yeah, no, definitely. I was just really surprised with how much stuff with the printers, especially. That was the one aspect on the hardware where I definitely need to polish up.
It's one of those things I think a lot of people
absolutely
appreciate the call. It's one of those sections, especially in printers, where I think a lot of people think that the printer section is so huge. It's really not that big. But because we never work with these technologies, or at least rarely work with these technologies, it seems like it's all brand new. It's all a world of technology we've never touched before. There's virtual printing and 3D printing on this latest version of the exam. There's dot matrix is still there because there's plenty of dot matrix printers still in use. Laser printers are complex pieces of machinery. So all of these are involved. And when the printer isn't working, it's remarkable how important suddenly that printer is. So this is why we always talk about that. But again, it's a small section of a much larger section that is part of multiple sections of this exam. And you might get 4 or 5 printer questions, but that's going to be about it. You're not going to get a ton of printer questions on your exam. So it's another one where you have to balance it out with everything that you're doing. I think it's a good idea. Back to the phones, 301 area code. Hi, caller. Which name were you calling from? Caller. 301 caller.
Hello.
Hi, caller. Which
Hello?
name were you calling from?
Yes. Hey, hi. My name's Harold. I'm calling from Maryland.
Hi, Harold from Maryland. What can we do for you?
Hey, so I have a question, actually. So I actually have both Security Plus and A Plus certs, thanks to you, of course. And
Nice.
I'm working towards my Network Plus right now.
Great.
So how much overlap is there from Security Plus and A Plus towards the Network Plus?
There's a little bit of overlap between the two. I did these numbers probably for A plus and Network plus. Maybe I'll look them up here while I have you on the phone, because I actually ran numbers of comparison. I did a Google sheet. I keep a list of, in each of these exams, how many topics are in each of these exams, and then I compare the number of topics between the different versions. That's something unique that I do, because I have to count these topics. I have to present these topics and do training on these topics. So that's why I do it that way. For the A plus and Network plus, not a ton of overlap. I'm going back to what's in the Network plus part of the exam, and it's a tiny part of the 1001. It focuses on how to configure networking for a machine, for like in a Windows operating system. So you have to know what an IP address is, a subnet mask. You have to know what a default gateway is in a DNS, and kind of what DHCP is. And that's kind of it. If you can do an IP config, you've pretty much summarized everything that's in the A plus exam. So not a ton of networking as you compare that to Network plus. Where a lot of people talk about comparisons is in Network plus to Security plus. And I hear a lot of people say that there's a lot of overlap between those two. But I did a breakdown of all of the different exam topics and which ones match up. And I think it came up with like 11% of the Network plus exam objectives showed up in Security plus. So it was things like, what is a router? What is a wireless access point? What is a network? Kind of thing. They weren't a lot of details. You don't get a lot of, in the Security plus exam, there's no categories of cable. You don't have to know about Ethernet standards. There's not a lot of breakdown of what you need to know about fiber versus copper. There's not a lot of those details. It's more of the security topics from Network plus were duplicated in Security plus, as you might expect. And I counted up, it was only 11%. So if that's the case, you probably don't have to worry about overlap too much. It's not going to help you, unfortunately, too much either. Each one of these exams tends to stand on their own. A plus is its own self-contained machine. Network plus is very self-contained. Security plus maybe pulls a little bit from Network plus, but it's in a security perspective. Again, self-contained. So I wouldn't rely on some of the overlap, but it will be very comfortable to you when you get to those topics, because you at least have some background already on the things you have done with A plus and Security plus.
Wow, awesome. And I have one more question. I also noticed that in CompTIA they have stackable certs. How does that actually work? And the value is put in your resume?
Well, I think I caught some of that. There was a little bit of breaking up on there. Was the CompTIA stackable certs was the question. And this does come up from time to time. If you go out the CompTIA website, I'm going to pop this up on my screen for those of you that are watching. These are stackable certifications. This was something that was created, last year before? They haven't been around for a very long time. But they've created, for instance, the CompTIA Specialist certification, which is an IT operations specialist. If you have A plus and Network plus, you're a CIOS. A CompTIA IT operations specialist. If you have A plus and Linux plus, you are a CompTIA systems support specialist, or a CSSS. If we scroll down a little bit, if you have Network plus and Server plus, you're a CompTIA network infrastructure professional. And if you have Security plus and Pentest plus, you're a CNVP, a CompTIA Network Vulnerability Assessment Professional. Look how many of these there are. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 stackable certifications on the CompTIA website. I would argue that hiring managers and people in the human resources of companies have no idea what these are. I doubt they come up in keyword searches. I doubt they're even known in those particular areas. They just don't have a lot of hooks. It's hard to remember them. There's a lot of them. They don't mean anything. CompTIA System Support Specialist, I don't even know what that is. What does that mean? I don't understand what they're telling me of that stackable certification. So that's why I tell people, don't, the stackable certification is for us. It's for us to have a thing that we can put on a resume that shows that we accomplished this series of certifications. But if you're putting this on your resume, for example, if you're putting the CompTIA Linux Network Professional on your resume, also make sure separately that you put that you earn the Network Plus and that you earn the Linux Plus, because those two together make that stackable. And if you, the first thing you have to do is get through those candidate systems that are looking for keywords, and they're going to be looking for Network Plus and Linux Plus way before they will ever even know to look for CompTIA Linux Network Professional. So those are my biggest recommendations, is absolutely use the stackables, but they're really just as a talking point. Make sure you spell out all of those individual certifications that you have earned and when you earn them, so that somebody reading through your resume can at least get a reference point. You don't want somebody reading your resume and saying, well, you don't even have your Network Plus. Well, no, I have the CompTIA Network Linux Network Professional. Yeah, that's what I said. You don't have Network Plus, but you do, but they don't know. So that's why I think they're very useful for bragging rights, but probably not as useful on your resume.
Well, that's all the questions I have for now. Thanks for taking my call, and thanks for all the work that you do, especially those practice exams. They're absolutely amazing. They're absolutely worth it. I mean, they were a contributing factor for me passing security and A+.
Fantastic. Thank you, Harold. I appreciate that. Appreciate the kind words with the practice exams too. Best of luck. That's always good to hear too, because we spend a lot of time. I say we, but I'm the one writing these practice exams. I don't send them out anywhere. Every single one is written by me. Every word of those practice exams is originally written by me, and the questions and the answers, everything, because I think that's the only way to do it. I think the only way you're going to have quality practice exams, and what could be more important from a quality perspective than your practice exams, needs to be something that is written with you in mind, being able to pass these. So I'm glad that that worked out for you. I know that's kind of what takes so long to make these, is it takes a long time to write them. It's something we go back and forth, because I could have other people write them for me. I just don't think the quality would be as good. And then you're back to where you started. So I appreciate that. Those words are very motivational. Thanks so much. To the 757 area code. Hi, caller. Which name were you calling from?
How you doing, Professor Messer? This is Quentin from Virginia.
Hello, Quentin. What can we do for you?
I got two questions. First one, I'm studying to get my A+ currently, and I'm just not a big study person. So generally when I'm studying for something or I'm going to take a test, I pretty much just cram before the test. And generally I succeed, but with the pricing of the A+, I don't think that would be the best method to do with this test. What would you recommend as a study method?
It is kind of, I have a 4-point study method that I recommend for everything. And this 4-point method is on my website. If you go to professormesser.com, in the pull down menus on the website, I have links to these that are there. Pull it up and have a look at it. So under A+, Core 1, Core 2, Network Plus, and Security Plus, at the bottom of those lists are things, if I go to Security Plus study recommendations. And most of these are links where you can go and get third-party products, but they're also categorized in the way that I like to see people studying. So there's four major sections of resources I like to see people have. One are a set of videos. Now I say my videos, but they could be anybody's videos. Just have a good video course to reference. You need a good book. That's always a good idea, because books will teach you differently than videos will. Videos will teach you differently than books will. They work together. So getting a good book also becomes important. I put a few good books up on my list here. The third is to get plenty of hands-on. This can be a little more challenging. I work a lot with the folks over at Practice Labs. I like their products. I've been using their products for years and years and years. So I have a link to the Practice Labs products on this page. But anytime you can get some hands-on at the keyboard, at a command prompt, running these commands they give you on the exam, setting up tunnels between devices, being able to do things that are practical, I think it always helps solidify some of those topics in your brain. And the last one, and probably the thing to see if you're really ready to take the exam, you mentioned these are expensive exams. You don't want to be in a situation where you're spending all this money and not passing. Well, are you ready to take the exam? And I think one of the best ways is to take some practice exams. And that's the reason I wrote these books, so that you can go through some Q&A and get a feel. Am I getting them right? Am I not getting them right? Are these the questions and the style of questions that are going to be asked on the exam? Am I ready for that style? There's a lot of reading, for instance, for Security Plus. Am I ready to read through all of these things? Am I set and prepared for the style of questioning they're going to have for me? And so those 4 things are the ones I recommend: getting a good set of videos, a good set of books, plenty of hands-on, and lots of Q&A. And if you have those 4 things, you at least, I think, have the best possible chance of passing your exam. You, of course, have to apply all 4 of those things and be able to be ready for your exam. Some of these exams, especially things like Security Plus, are not exams you can walk in off the street and just pass without studying anything. They are very detailed. There's a lot of content. It's very broad. It's not incredibly deep, but boy, you have to know a lot of different topics across this very broad set. So that's why I mentioned all 4 of those, because you're going to get a little bit of that. And ultimately, your exam objectives is going to be your checklist. If you go out and get the exam objectives, print it out if you have to, so that you can check it off, circle it, put it in a PDF editor, whatever you have to do to go through each one bullet by bullet by bullet. And there's a lot of bullets to go through on these exams, but go through every single bullet and make sure you really understand the topic. And if you don't, circle it, go cram on that particular topic and really understand it before you walk in to take that exam.
Gotcha. And as far as my second question, I was wondering, do you have any recommendations on jobs you or I should search for, low-level IT jobs to get my foot in the door for someone with like limited experience?
This has come up a lot in the last couple of weeks, because I posted out on YouTube a couple weeks ago how to get a job in IT without experience, which is one of the, I mentioned in the video, I get this question on every single study group, because a lot of us are in this situation. If you've never had a job in IT, how do you get a job in IT when everybody wants you to have a job in IT? It's that catch-22 every single time for somebody trying to get their foot in the door. And if you go to that video on YouTube, which is how to get a job in IT with no experience, you go to my YouTube channel, ProfessorMesser.com. It's one of the most recent ones I did. That video itself not only has a lot of good ideas in the video, it's a 30-minute video that is chock full of ideas. I separate out the job hunt into 4 separate elements, which include things like getting a formal degree, getting industry certifications, getting some type of experience, and knowing people that are in the industry. So those are the 4 elements I talk about in those 30 minutes. And I give you advantages and disadvantages of having them or not having them on each one of those elements. And I give you some tips on how you can get some of this without maybe being in the industry already. The one that is about experience is the one we probably have gotten the most number of comments on the YouTube video. So not only watch the video, but read through some of the comments, because they're really, really good. People have put their experiences in there about how they got a job with no experience, things that they did to get experience. And one that I didn't put in my video, but I thought was really good most recently, was somebody that was talking about working as a contractor, working as a third party, as effectively a freelancer, because a lot of companies will have you work as a contractor where you are they're shipping you a motherboard, you're taking that motherboard on site, you're replacing the motherboard for a user, and they pay you X number of dollars and you're done. There's a lot of jobs like that, or jobs that are temporary. It's a 3-month job, it's a 6-month job. You know it's going to be temporary. But that's really good experience, and they tend to hire people with less experience because it is a temporary job. I thought that was a great comment, and something that if I had to do the video over again, I'd probably stick in there. But that's why we have comments open on that video, because there's some valuable information, little nuggets of information in those comments that people are leaving. You can get these experiences everywhere. In the video, I talk about other places you can get experience. I would recommend you go through that because I can't tell you 30 minutes of information on a phone call in a study group. I needed to put it into that format. There's no fluff whatsoever. It's 30 minutes of solid content. And hopefully I'm able to get all of it out so that you're able to work through it and see some of the things that that I've been able to document through the years. That's what I would recommend you go ahead and have a look at. You may find something that fits for your particular area or fits for your particular style, because all you need is that first bit of experience. You're not going to work as a contractor the rest of your IT career. You're not going to be on the help desk the rest of your IT career. You're going to be doing bigger and better things as you learn, as you work with other people, as you grow through your career. But you have to get in that first miserable, horrible help desk, service desk, travel around and install people's motherboards jobs, because we all do it. My first job doing that type of work was as a field technician. I would start in the morning. I would grab all the printers and parts and things I needed for the day. I'd hop in my car and I'd drive around South Florida all day, going from customer to customer to customer, installing memory, installing a hard drive, installing or upgrading these particular things. At the end of the day, I had all my signed invoices I would drop off, and then we'd repeat the whole thing the next day. But that's how you meet people in the industry. That's how you find out what you like to do and what you don't like to do. Those are fun things also to really learn. You're learning the whole time. I look back now and it was kind of a grunty job, because it was, but you were constantly learning something because you were new in the industry. And it was a lot of fun to work with these new servers and be able to install these networks for the first time and learn about these operating systems for the first time. That's something you'll do throughout your career, but it's only temporary. You're going to grow out of that. Don't be afraid to jump into the grunt jobs and get really dirty from the beginning, because that's going to set the tone for everything else you do in your career.
Okay. I greatly appreciate your Professor Messer, your time and your knowledge. I got the video pulled up right here, and I'm definitely going to check it out. Thank you again.
Thanks, Quentin. I appreciate the call. It's one of the top questions we get. Like, how do I get that foot in the door? And there's no one single way to do it. It's a combination of things. So how do you figure out the combination that works for you? Well, you watch the video is one way to go back and take some notes and then find the thing that works for you. A lot of you have built these relationships already with people that work in these companies. I think sometimes that's the most powerful thing you can have. A lot of people say experience trumps everything. Experience is the number one thing. Sometimes experience is not the number one thing. And I talk about that in the video too. So I hate to kind of push that off, like go watch the video, but it's 30 minutes long. I just can't do that in the after show. Everybody would decide they didn't want to watch the after show anymore. Back to the phones. And we will talk to the 513 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Professor Messer. My name's Chris, calling from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh, hi, Chris. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
I just wanted to mention to you that when you did that last question in the study group about the backups, you forgot to mention, there were two you forgot to mention: Rsync and TAR.
Well, those are certainly absolutely valuable backup methods, and I use Rsync and TAR extensively on ProfessorMesser.com. It's not Rsync specifically, it's an Lsync that I use because I have multiple web servers behind the scenes. When you connect to ProfessorMesser.com, you may not be connecting to one single web server. You're connecting to multiple web servers that are out there. And I update one server and I use Lsync to take all of my changes and duplicate them very quickly to all of those servers. So I don't have to go from server to server to server to server. I change it in one place and it pushes all those changes out to all the other servers. And TAR I use extensively. TAR is one that tape archives, what that stands for, where I collapse or I encapsulate everything within a TAR archive that I then gzip that is on my website, and then I download that every night to an offline version of my site. I talk all the time about, do you have backups? Do you have backups? Do you have backups? I have some backups because you never know what's going to happen out there? Is something going to happen to my site on the internet where all the data is going to get corrupted? Is it somehow going to get lost? I have multiple backups on the internet. What if it gets attacked with ransomware and everything gets encrypted? I don't have an offline backup unless I do that, and I use TAR to do that. The last question on the study group, though, was very specific to iPhones. And so we were talking about an iPhone user wanting to back up. Obviously, in an iPhone, we don't have TAR. We don't have Rsync. We don't have those Linux tools available on the iPhone, at least not from the user's perspective. And that's why it wasn't listed in that list of things. But from the idea of a backup, if you're studying for your A+ and you're working at all with macOS or Linux, make sure you're familiar with Rsync and make sure you're familiar with TAR. Very valuable tools to use, Chris. You're absolutely correct.
Yep. Have a nice day.
I appreciate the call. And that's a good heads up for everybody, by the way, because I heard someone mentioning this the other day in one of the Discords that I frequent, is that, well, it's the A+, all you have to know is Windows. I think a lot of people may not be familiar with the A+ of today, where there is a ton of Linux, all these Linux commands you need to understand how they work, and Mac OS. You have to know Mac OS utilities and other things as well. So plenty of things that are there. Make sure you're familiar with that. It's not just about Windows anymore. Let's go to click a button. There we go. 484. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller. 484. Are you there? Are you muted? Caller in PA.
Hello.
Hello, caller. Hi, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Caller in PA. Hello, caller. Hi, what's your name? Where are you from?
You're hearing a little bit of the stream there. You may want to turn the stream down so that you can talk in the phone, listen on the phone side. You'll notice there's a little bit of a delay. What's your question? Question. I'm going to give you a second so you can click all the buttons. Hi there. There you go. What's your question?
Give you a second. Hi there.
That was worth a shot anyway. The Discords I frequent, probably the one where we talk the most, is there is a CompTIA subreddit Discord. So if you go to reddit.com/r/CompTIA, there are links there to the CompTIA subreddit. So that's a good place to go. People ask questions all the time, and I'll just throw things in there. And of course, there's a 24/7 chat on ProfessorMesser.com as well that I frequent. So a lot of people are in that as well to be able to work through it. Let's go to 504. Hi, caller. Which name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Michael, calling from Louisiana, United States here. How you doing, sir?
Thanks for
calling.
coming.
I've been following your videos. Yes, sir. I've been following your videos and all kind of stuff that you post. You do a good job posting things out there for free.
Thank you.
Because for me, I'm not actually calling for the A+ right now because I have Network Plus, but I'm trying to attempt to take Security Plus.
Nice.
And I've kind of been watching all your fun videos, very educative. And I have a background because I just listened to one of the questions you answered when it comes to having a formal degree and stuff like that before you, for you to have a better shot at getting a job, stuff like that. I just graduated bachelor's in cybersecurity this May. But I'm kind of a little bit nervous going for Security Plus. I don't know, maybe I've been listening to all your videos, going through the tutorials and all kind of reading Udemy. And I'm actually about to buy one of your questions maybe later today because I listened to you last night, and I'm thinking I want to look at that too and see what knowledge I'm going to get in there to see. But my concern is, every time I apply for jobs, I don't know, maybe it's something you can answer, they always request for a security clearance, even though you don't have an experience. Or maybe you have an experience or you don't even know. Right now I'm working for a company that I do IT specialist, but I only have public trust, right? But they want some type of security clearance that I don't even know what they're talking about.
Right.
And of course they will tell you it's an entry-level position to the security, whatever platform. So I'm like, how am I supposed to get something I don't have? And that's another question that I feel like I've not been able to see somebody to give me a heads up with that.
Security clearances, whenever you see anything that is in the IT security world and they're asking for a clearance, it is almost always a company that has some relationship with the federal government and probably the Department of Defense. This is one that is very niche. It's very specific to federal government and Department of Defense. When you get into corporate IT, nobody's asking for a clearance. Nobody's looking for that type of technology unless that corporation has a relationship or is a vendor to the Department of Defense, and then they're required to have a certain set of standards that they follow. So it's a little harder if you live in Virginia, because in Virginia, there's so many organizations that are working with the federal government. There's very few that aren't working with the federal government in some way. And so they want to see if you have this security clearance already. And the security clearances, there are different levels of clearance, and there is a set of things that the government will do to make sure that you meet a certain set of standards. These standards vary widely. They want to be sure that you have people that can vouch for you, that you don't have any prior felonies. There's a big list of things that they go through, and there's different levels of clearances that you can have. But there's also these things take time to get the clearance. There's usually money involved to have to go through the process. And very often you have to have somebody who will either cover that charge or be able to work you through the system to get that clearance. And I know that a lot of places want you to have it already. And if you don't have it, then and that's one of those that's very difficult to qualify for unless you have somehow managed to get a job with a company that got you that clearance. So that may be what you look for is two things. If you're trying to interview with a company and they want a clearance and you don't have it, then you may not qualify for that job. You may have to find a company that doesn't have that relationship with the federal government, or find one of those jobs with companies that do get you that initial clearance, and then they expect you to work for them for a certain amount of time to be able to cover that clearance, because there is time and money that it takes to earn that particular clearance. It's a science unto itself. I can't say I understand a lot of it because I've never had a clearance with the federal government. I've worked in a part of the country where I didn't have to have that. I've talked a lot with federal government and worked with them from a vendor perspective, but the vendors don't have to have that clearance, at least not for the things that I was doing. So that's one where maybe we look other places first to see if there's a job that doesn't require it, or find one of those jobs that gets it for you. And then from that point on, you can then keep it up and work with federal government companies from that point forward. It's not an easy thing to get. So it's one that's going to take a lot more research for you to be able to figure out what makes sense in your area. But you may find that once you look around in your particular geography, maybe a lot of the companies don't require it and it's not going to be an issue. You'll just have to find out.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate the heads up.
Appreciate it, Michael.
So do you have any guidance? Yes, sir. Do you have any guidance towards, because I already booked a date. I've been studying, though. I have a date on the 11th, which is next week, Tuesday, to do my Security Plus. Do you have any other added tips that you have in your own
Well, absolutely. You're coming up in the last week or so of studies. Now's the time to grab the exam objectives and step through the exam objectives. They should be your checklist. They will tell you the things you know and the things you don't know. And now I think a week before is the perfect time to go through, because now you can really circle the things that you feel you've learned, and you should be able to very easily see the things you don't know yet. So they should jump right out of that page at you. Those are the things you should focus on in that last week. Get as much circled on that list as you can, and you'll be ready for that exam.
Sweet. Thank you, sir.
I appreciate it, Michael.
Just that.
Best of luck. I appreciate the call. In the chat room, speaking of clearances, Miriam says the company you're applying for has to ask the government to get you an SF-86 to apply for a clearance. Of course they do. Isn't that? It never gets old, does it? You have to get that SF, Sierra Fox /86 to get a clearance. Miriam says, I used to have a clearance long ago, did the background checks for a bit. So getting that initial low-level clearance may not require a lot. In fact, that's one of the things I've heard. People said they do background checks on you. They might call some of your connections, and that's kind of it. The standard Form 86. And Joseph said he got it through the military, SF-86. Everybody who's got the SF-86 is now commenting in the chat room. That's a very common way to do it. There's your Google task of the day. Go out there, Michael, have a look at the SF-86 and see what that takes to be able to get that. I imagine that takes quite a bit of time too to get that. And who knows how long it takes now to step through and get those. Time frames are sort of in the air right now, and being able to work through all of that. Really quite a challenge. Let's go back to the phones. We've got more time here. I'm a little over time. That's okay. We're going to step through a couple more from the folks in Canada. 909 area code. Hi, caller. Which name were you calling from?
Hey, Professor. I'm calling from Ronald Heights, California.
Oh, it's not Canada at all. What can we do for you?
My name's... Hey, I just have a quick question about command line. So if a computer has a different language, does the command line language also change, or do they stay the same in everywhere?
Well, you've got some, the command lines, if you're talking specifically, are you thinking about differences between Windows versions, or are you referring to maybe going between Windows, Linux, and Mac OS?
Yes, but with the computer being set to a different language.
So when you talk about command lines, especially in Windows, for example, the command line is the Windows command line. It is literally called the command line or the command interpreter in Windows. It's a sort of an holdover from the old DOS days, and it's a way to run things at that command line that are kind of DOS-specific commands. Those commands kind of the same, whether you worked on Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10, previous versions of Windows, future versions of Windows. All those command lines are basically going to be compatible with each other with maybe minor differences between them. But that's why, for example, Microsoft came out with PowerShell. You have this really old command prompt in Windows that didn't give you a lot of access to the operating system. It didn't allow you to interact with Active Directory. There wasn't a lot of automation you could do with it. So they came out with PowerShell, a completely different shell. It is different language, if you will, than the command line that comes in Windows. But boy, it includes such flexibility that you can create these applets that you can run, and you can integrate with Active Directory, and it integrates to Windows, and I can manage services automatically, and I can configure and set up things that I could never do easily at the Windows command prompt. Combine that now with going to Linux, it has a completely different command line that has no similarities at all to Windows. Maybe you'll find one or two utilities that's similar. You can type in the same thing. If you type in a dir in Windows and you go to Linux, you can't type in dir. Doesn't work to have those things there. So you do find there are significant differences in what you can run in those command lines between different types of operating systems, but generally different versions of those. The OS is one that would be very much the same as you move from version to version. Is there some nuance to that you were interested in, or something specific to that you were interested in?
No, just in with a computer with a different language. I was just wondering if the commands stay the same. Also in Linux. Yeah, for example, if the machine is in Spanish, would the command still remain the same?
The chat room was right. You were talking about the spoken word language. So if you're working in English, in Italian, in Spanish, in other languages, it certainly looks different on the screen.
Right.
Many of the commands are very much the same. There are nuances, though, between them at the command prompt, so that they are, in some ways, some of those commands are changed to be in that local dialect. Certainly when you get into languages that require a different keyboard, then obviously there's going to be different commands that you would use. But there are minor differences. So if you go to If you're in Russia, you're working at a command prompt in Cyrillic, there's going to be a different set of commands that you would type in a different way that are going to have similar, but you have to translate between those two to have all of those. Does become a little bit of a challenge, especially as the keyboards change, as the language changes. There's going to be changes in some of those commands as well. You're absolutely correct.
Thank you, Professor. Have a good day.
I appreciate the call. It's kind of a challenge. If you ever want to mess somebody up, one of the great pranks was always to go to the control panel and change somebody's keyboard to be a different country's keyboard. And then it looks the same, but now none of the keys are working properly. I never said to do that. I said we would maybe sort of do that on other people's machines. I've never told you to do that, just so we're clear. You should totally do that. Go to 682 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller. Hi, caller. Are you there?
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm Logan calling from Fort Worth, Texas.
Hey, Logan.
First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for releasing all of the content you have on YouTube. I'm just found out about you some weeks ago when I first found out about the A+ and all these certifications and things like that, hitting the ground running.
Absolutely. You're very welcome.
I'm working my way through your videos.
Glad to hear it.
But my question is, all of the additional study materials you recommend for, like, I know you say initially, like, do not only use my videos as your only source of information, but are there any free resources that I can use during this time that you would actually recommend, like, or that you're aware of? Because I can't really at this juncture, like, invest money into this, but I don't want to waste this time.
It's tough. I like my videos.
Is there any free aside from your videos, are there any free resources that you would like give the Professor Messer stamp of approval for?
Well, it's tough to find free resources to begin with. That's one of the reasons why I put all of this content on YouTube to begin with, and we've been putting this on YouTube for 15 years, and just putting A+, Network+, Security+, Microsoft, Cisco, Linux, just whatever we can find, we'll stick out there through the years. Some of those are no longer active, but the reason we did that is because it's so hard to find good free content on the internet. Even today, it was that way 15 years ago. It still remains a challenge today to find that. And part of the reason for that is that it takes a lot of time to create this content. A book takes months to write. Videos take months to produce. And companies that are creating books and videos and other content use a business model where they prefer to have it sold. They just sell it to people and make it available that way. We have found a model here that works a little better where we can at least give away the entire course, and then other people can help support us by buying course notes, practice exams, and other pieces of that I don't feel are a requirement to watch the video course, but they might help you with your studies. At some point, it's hard to find past that good free content that is out there on the internet. There are some places that occasionally will show you or have available videos that you can watch for a certain amount of time. And at least that's some way to do it. But I think maybe one of the best free resources that a lot of people don't think about are at their local libraries. There are entire technical libraries from O'Reilly, which include A+ books, Network+ books, Security+ books, video series that are available from them. The LinkedIn video series are sometimes available free through your local library. And all you need is the library card, which these days you might even be able to get online in a lot of places, and you access them all online. You don't have to check anything out and show up at a place and they stamp your books. They don't do that anymore. You just go to the library's website, you put in your credit, your license, your renter's license for your library card. They qualify it, they make sure that it's you, they authenticate you, and now you have access to all of those videos in your local library. That one is very, very useful because it's free content. It's high quality free content. You're already paying for it because it's your local library. You might as well get your tax dollars back out of this. And now you've got access to things you never had access to before that are there at your local library, and things you may have not even realized were there, and then some. Because once you're done with these, now there's other courses and other things you can take there as well. That's another good resource, I think.
And the other question was, I forgot about it now. So yeah, all right. I was looking around the CompTIA subreddit and things that you recommended, like that, the Discord, and like I had a little conflicting information about the value of the A+ certification itself. Like some say, oh, it'll be a guaranteed hire here, or somebody's like, hey, the A+ is a joke in my field. It's just way too broad. It teaches you very little practical skills. It's not enough on its own. I'm not sure if this, if you would know, or if you have your finger on the pulse of hiring and information technology, but obviously you have a course on it. What really is the role of A+ in the overall, scope of these certifications and education?
It is one that is constantly fought over in these online forums, and people go back and forth over it. Has no value whatsoever to you. Absolutely have to have it to be able to get your first job. The actual reality is in the middle, of course. People that feel like the A+ has no value are maybe people that are way past in their career needing the A+. They're already a network administrator. They're already a server administrator. They've already got Microsoft certifications. That's certainly the case. And of course, for them, getting an A+ certification, they wouldn't need one. They're already way past that point in their career. Of course, they don't need one. But to say in their position that the certification itself is worthless is remarkably myopic. It is without any type of sarcasm or and I don't want to beat around the bush with this, is they don't understand how the industry is using that certification. And they also don't understand what you're learning in the certification. I think a lot of people, and I've heard this constantly, well, I don't take the A+ because they teach you have to learn about token ring and floppy drives. And I always mention, well, they don't teach token ring and floppy drives on the A+. They haven't in a very, very, very long time since token ring and floppy drives was around. And then they go, no, they do, and that's why it's worthless. So I think some people just maybe aren't familiar enough with the A+. They don't know that the A+, if your Windows isn't booting, what do? They don't know the A+ actually teaches you how to get to the recovery prompt and what to type in to be able to solve these things. They don't know that there are all these Linux command lines that you need to know that are taught to you on the A+. They don't know that there's Mac OS utilities that you need to be familiar with that are on the A+, along with all the other Windows things that you have to know, because they just haven't kept up with it. The industry is the real arbiter, I think. It doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what they think. It doesn't matter our opinion of the A+. The real determination of the value of any certification is what you're able to do with it. Are there people that are hiring that are looking for that certification? There absolutely is. Therefore, the A+ has an intrinsic value associated with it. It is not a guarantee for a job. No one thing guarantees you a job. It's a combination of things. I mentioned that in my video on how to get a job in IT with no experience. As I tell you, none of these things are magic bullets. None of these things are a bean that you put into the ground and your magic beanstalk grows. You have to have a combination of these things together to be able to really be able to present a unified front to a potential employer. But knowing what the employer wants is the most is most important thing. If the employer wants to see an A+, then you better have an A+. If the employer doesn't care about an A+, then guess what? The A+ doesn't matter. Every employer is a little bit different. So in a way, the person saying it doesn't matter is correct, and the person saying it does matter is correct. It depends on who you're talking to be able to get that job. And the one thing I always go back to is that there's also part of this that doesn't matter what the employer wants. If you have gone through the entire A+ course, You now have this knowledge. You understand this hardware. You've worked with it at the command line. You've installed Windows. You've worked with Linux at the command line. You've seen Mac OS in operation. You've been able to troubleshoot things at a recovery prompt. You've been able to understand how to work through these issues and what you can do with Windows. All of those things are things you now know. You now have taught yourself all of this amazing knowledge that will help you in your career as you continue on, whether you use it as I got this from an A+ certification or not. You're now more knowledgeable. And in IT, that is an incredibly valuable thing because those skills really equate to you getting a job, getting another job, getting a better job, and making more money or doing something else that you want to be able to do. That's the real key to me. When you get any certification, whether it's A+ or Microsoft or VMware or Cisco or Palo Alto Networks, it doesn't matter. You've now learned that content. And as much as people want to poo-poo it and say, look how stupid you are because you now know all of this stuff, which doesn't make any sense at all, you now have that knowledge. And when you pass them in your career, and you see them in your rearview mirror as you are now going and doing the things you wanted to do in your career and moving up in your career and being in the part of IT that you wanted to be in, now it really doesn't matter what they thought because it's really about what you were able to do with it.
Yeah, it's like we get hung up on which cert you have and which cert you're studying for, and like, oh, it's really just a label we place on, I guess, an aggregate of skills and knowledge, and that's what really is important. What are you learning? The other question, you mentioned command line and the actual like practical like areas of the test. I have set up a basic virtual machine on my computer, but in terms of getting like just having like a place, kind of like a playground to mess around with and really like drill myself on the practical portions of the A+. Is there any other thing you would recommend? I think you mentioned something in there for getting practical somewhere throughout the stream, but I can't remember.
There is. On my website, I have some recommended resources available for the Core 1, the Core 2, Network Plus, and Security Plus. And for some of those, and I should put it on the A+ as well, are links over to the practice exam side for getting virtual machines online that you can work with in labs that are available on the practice exams. But I also tell people to go out to modern.ie and download the free Microsoft Windows VMs from there. Go out to your favorite Linux distribution like Mint or Ubuntu and download those and be able to run those in a VM and work with all of those. That way, if it's in a VM, you can mess up the whole thing. You can crash it. You can make the operating system broken. It doesn't affect your local machine. Those are great ways for free to set up, and now you've got an environment to work in. Those are great ways to do it as well. And if you follow along with my videos at the command line, at least, you can run exactly the same commands on your side and see what results you get with that. Remember, the performance-based questions are more than just simulations. These are questions that are asking you fill in. They might be drag and drop. They might be matching questions. They might be sorting questions. They're not always a simulation. So keep that in mind as well.
What did you mention for getting the, what was it? So something about local Linux distribute, like getting the, what was it? To be able to run Linux in a VM or like Mac OS as well, as like Microsoft. What were those again?
The ones for if you want some Windows 10 virtual machines that are all ready to download that you can run on your computer, whether, doesn't matter what operating system you're using because it's a VM, go out to modern.ie, M-O-D-E-R-N, like the modern world, MODERN.IE as in Internet Explorer. It is a Microsoft developer website that's designed for Internet Explorer developers to be able to test their code. But as long as you're using that VM for non-production purposes, you fall under the EULA and you're allowed to use it for non-production purposes. So fantastic to be able to use. So you can run Windows 10 and it works fantastic. Doesn't matter what operating system you happen to be using. Linux is a little easier because Linux is free to download and run. So you can go out and grab a distribution of Linux like Mint or Ubuntu and or anything, or CentOS, or anything you would like. Find one that you're interested in, download it, and you can run that and pull up the command line on those. Mac OS is a little bit different. Mac OS, the end user licensing agreement for Mac OS does not allow you to run it as a VM unless you are running it on Apple hardware. Well, if I had Apple hardware, I wouldn't need the VM. So that's one of those that perhaps you will not be able to run on Windows or Linux. But if you do have somebody that does have a Mac OS system, that may be a good one to use.
Be a little troublesome there. Apple's always trying to keep everything proprietary, keep everything close to their chest.
There's advantages and disadvantages both ways, I guess. But yeah, it is a little more difficult to be able to get that on a Mac OS side.
All right. Thank you very much.
Good luck with that. I think you'll find plenty of things to do at that point. You can always fun when you get into the VMs. I appreciate the call. That's one where if you're in a situation where you're trying to find more hands-on to do, there's plenty out there, and running those VMs is a great way to do it. Back to the phones real quick. We're a little over time now, but I think we can go back. Thanks for holding for so long. 925. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Well, we gave it a shot. It's one of those where you have to listen in to the call and not the stream, or you just get the looping like we just did there. I feel bad because you were holding for so long. You're welcome to call back, though. We'll go to a 210 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Professor. My name is David. Hey, I got a quick question. I'm doing the studying right now for Security Plus.
Yeah.
And I'm watching your videos, and I feel like it's like a lot of theory. I'm learning a lot about the theory of everything, but if I was somehow I got a job and I was put in a situation where it's like, all right, cool, go do this stuff, I wouldn't know where to even start. Yep. So is Security Plus kind of like just more of theory and less application, or am I missing something?
Security Plus is very much focused on process and procedure and nomenclature, understanding the words we use in the IT security world, because as you've seen, there's a lot of words that are very specific to IT security that you have to know about. You go into a meeting with a firewall vendor, and they're going to talk to you about the firewall ACLs. They're going to talk to you about the switching and the routing they do. They'll talk to you about the VPN connectivity they have that's site-to-site, the VPN connectivity they have that's client-based. They'll talk to you about cloud-based malware detection. They'll talk to you about intrusion prevention, all these terms that come up in Security Plus. So you have to get some type of foundational knowledge of the language so that when you talk to another security professional, you at least understand theoretically what conversation you're having at the moment. That's the thing that sometimes is the hardest part.
So it's like
Go ahead,
So it's
Dave.
like the A plus of the network and security world.
Maybe even less than that. There is some hands-on. There is some command line for Security Plus. So you're not always looking at process and procedure. But when you get into security, you have these other challenges. Here are some real-world situations I've been in. So IT security. I work for a company that makes a next-generation firewall. I walk into a meeting where I'm demonstrating the firewall. We plug it into their network. Instantly, the firewall identifies someone on the network that is transferring information that is highly, not illegal, but inappropriate. Very inappropriate content being sent over the network. And my technology was good enough that not only did it show you the information was inappropriate and categorize it as such, it showed you pictures of the content and how inappropriate it was, and the particular niche that this person was being inappropriate with. So you get into those situations, though, and now what do you do? And this is probably one of the most important aspects of IT security is knowing what do you do next to not mess this up. Do you block them from communicating over the network? Do you call their manager? Do you go just grab their PC and lock it in a room? Do you wrap it? Do you get Lysol everywhere and clean their cube out? What do? Do you fire them instantly? What happens? It's uncomfortable. It's because it's kind of a weird situation that you're in where now you've seen this and now it's on the network and it's not supposed to be there, but now you have to be the adult in the room. Now what do you do? And there has to be a set of policies and procedures for that organization that dictates what they do, step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 4. And that is one of those that, depending on the organization, may be instantly you're fired, or it may not be, depending on the organization. But that's one where you have to know what to do next as an IT security professional. And so they do spend time on the video, on the course, taking you through these security events and when they happen and what you do and what's next on the list. What happens if you identify an attack from the outside? You identify botnets that are already inside the network. What do? That's another real world situation where I went into a company, we plugged it in, and instantly saw devices that were already infected in their network communicating out to the motherships on the IRC channels. They were infected with a botnet and receiving command and control from a third party. What do you do? Now, those are some serious issues, security issues. You have to know what to do next. And the Security Plus exam takes you through that. It's not sexy. It's not technologically interesting. You're not working with bits and bytes. You're not configuring a firewall. You're not working at the command line. You're working with policies and procedures. It's a little bit dry, but it is incredibly necessary. It's incredibly important. You're now responsible for keeping companies' data safe and making sure that there's not going to be any significant security events. You better know what to do next. And that's one of those things that the Security Plus does take you down that road. Very different than A Plus, very different than Network Plus, but still just as important.
So would Network Plus be the next thing I should focus on to learn on actually implementing these different network security, routers and stuff like that? Or what would be the next step after Security Plus?
I can't stress highly enough how important it is to have a very solid foundation in networking if you plan to go into IT security. A huge part of IT security is focused on understanding what's happening on the network. You must have an expertise in networking to be able to be very good at all at implementing these security technologies. When you get into just a firewall, you plug a firewall in, most firewalls are running at layer 3, so you have to understand routing. Sometimes you have to understand dynamic routing. Sometimes most of the time, those are on the edge of the network, so you have to understand NAT, not only outbound NAT, but the inbound NATs that are occurring. So you got both source NATs and destination NATs. Very often, those routers are put in redundantly. Sometimes it's an active-passive configuration. Sometimes it's an active-active configuration. And so those are engineered differently and implemented into the network in a different way. And you'll be setting up routers and switches differently depending on how you put them in. Very often there's VPN connectivity, IPsec VPNs between sites that determine how the data gets back and forth using routing tables. There's also end-user VPNs that are often using these firewalls as an endpoint, where you've got now SSL VPN connectivity that are, you have authentication that has to be set up there on the firewall. So you're setting up Radius or LDAP or TACACS or something else. All those things I just mentioned are all networking problems. There wasn't even any security in that list of things I just really talked about. Most of that was how do you configure the network to make all of those things happen. So you have to have that knowledge of networking if you ever plan to get to a point to use those technologies in a security field.
So should I focus on the network first before going into the security, or should I just finish the security?
You're going to have time to do both. So Security Plus is a great place to start. Network Plus is a good place to start as well. You can't go wrong either way, because after you finish those two, you're going to just build on them. If you want that networking knowledge, you're going to go get more Cisco. If you're going to want security knowledge, you're going to go get more CNI, I won't say CH, but maybe Palo Alto Networks or a firewall or a SIM or a VPN or some other type of certification from a vendor. There's going to be more of this no matter what you plan on doing. This is just the first step.
And now the way things are going, would you recommend is still network security still the hot thing to get, or do you think going into the cloud is, better, more lucrative?
I think both of those are probably the two hottest places to be in IT right now. Cloud technologies have taken off. They continue not just to take off, but they're continuing to evolve. Cloud is so new. We think everybody's on the cloud now, and they are, but we're just getting started with cloud technologies. We're still finding ways to optimize and use those technologies. It's an exciting and very dynamic environment, but very focused on networking and very focused on operating systems. Security is a completely different world unto itself. Security, just because of the nature of it, continues to evolve. Security today, very different than security was 10 years ago. 10 years from now, it will be very different than it is today. So it will always be changing and updating. Both of those areas of technology are not only technologically exciting because there's so much to learn and it's constant learning, but people who know this technology and know it well also get paid a lot of money, which is also important for somebody who wants to move up in this industry. You can't go wrong either way. Find the thing that interests you the most and choose that one.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, man. Thank you for answering the call.
Thanks, David. I appreciate the call. That's I think one of the most significant advantages to IT in general. And the reason I tell people that once you get into technology, it's unlike any other vertical market you would ever run into. This is unlike transportation. It's unlike medicine. It's unlike manufacturing. It's unlike any other field you would go into. Because in IT, you can start one place and just see something interesting and go to that place and do that thing. And then you see something interesting and you're doing something completely different. In my career, I've gone from being a field tech to somebody working with a help desk, to working with operating systems, to working with networks, to working with security. And it wasn't a direct path, but every step along the way, I said, that's interesting. Let me go learn about that one. And then you learn it and people want you to do that for them and they give you money. And that's what an amazing place to be. There's not a lot of places you can do that. If you train to be a doctor and you are the best ankle doctor in the world, you're always going to be an ankle doctor. You're probably going to get paid pretty well to be an ankle doctor. You're going to work some crazy hours. But people who are high-level technologists get paid about what ankle doctors get paid. And they're not having to wake up at midnight and go take care of ankles. So there is, and then later on, if they want to move out of networking and go into security, they can do that. An ankle doctor is always going to be an ankle doctor. That's one of those things that is so unique to IT, and that's why I get excited about the technology and telling other people about it, because it's almost freeing. It almost is ridiculous in the amount of flexibility you have. There's so many opportunities that you can go into, and as things change in the industry, you just change with it. There's always going to be something new to learn and somewhere else to go with this. Back to the phones, 559. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from? 559. Are you there, caller? Fresno, go ahead. Are you off mute? Are you not there? Are we not hearing you? Got you potted up. I guess you're just not there. I'm so sorry. Give us a try again. Let's go back to the phone calls. 856. Hi, caller. Are you there? Caller.
Hi.
Hi. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Kerry. I'm calling from New Jersey.
Well, thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
My main question is, like, for example, now I'm starting with a CompTIA A+ exam. For example, when I'm done with a CompTIA A+, what do you think is the next step in the industry sets? Like, is it should I go in the order of like networking plus, security plus, and then maybe Linux? Because my priority is trying to do maybe Linux plus or trying to get into like cloud computing. So I don't know which steps, which sets, like I don't know if there's a particular order that I should go when taking the sets.
I love both of these, by the way. I love getting into Linux. I love getting into cloud computing. Both of those are interesting. In many ways, they sort of are combined together because there's so much Linux in cloud computing. Anyway, your question though is very specific to direction and growth in the industry, and what do you do next? And this is a common question, not just for somebody who's finishing up their A+, but a lot of people go through A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. One of their big questions is, what do I do next? And the answer is, I don't have the answer for you because I don't know what you want to do next. I don't know what other employers in your area are looking for, and I don't know in your mind what the thing is you want to do. Well, in this case, we're talking with each other. I do know what you want to do. You want to do some Linux, you want to do some cloud, a little bit of both of those, or one or the other. And that's a perfectly good place to go. Maybe now's the time you look into some Linux certifications. So as you come out of A+, maybe you're focusing on operating system. Maybe you look at, I guess some of the Linux Plus is an interesting one to look at. The industry probably from a Linux perspective are the Red Hat certifications. Those are very popular certs that a lot of employers are looking for. And that's your balancing act. You want to get a cert that allows you to learn something, but you also want to get a cert that employers would like you to have. And the Red Hat certifications are certainly popular certifications on the Linux side. Cloud computing is a little bit different. Cloud is relatively new. There's not a ton of cloud computing certifications. There is Cloud Plus, so there are some in the industry. But generally, cloud technologies are wrapped into another type of certification. Maybe the Google certification that they have a cloud type piece to the Google certification, the technician certification that they have. Cisco, for example, has some cloud in their certifications as well. So there are places where you can get cloud-specific certs as well, and you can look around at some of those. And each one of those is a little bit different, and each one has a different focus and a different context. It just depends on what you're interested in at the moment and where you would like to spend your time and money to be able to get certified in those technologies. Either way, though, you're in good shape. If you want to focus on Linux and move towards a Linux career, or at least to begin with Linux, that's a fantastic direction to go. Depending on where you are in the world, there are tons of companies that need Linux people, some places more than others. Check your local job postings, and you may want to look right now what job postings out there looking for Linux administrators, what job postings out there looking for cloud computing administrators. So find out what they have out there, and you may get an idea in your geography which one has more popularity, and that may be a big decision making for you. That may help you a lot, try to figure out what direction to go. Or maybe you're just, you start looking at the two and you realize, you know what, I love Linux. I'm just going to go down the Linux route and we'll find a job that way. That's a perfectly valid and usable strategy as well. You just have to find the one that feels best to you, because you're going to be doing this for a huge part of your career. So why not focus on that technology that you love to do?
Okay. Because basically my question is like, is Linux a thing of the future, or is it like dying out, you know? Because I don't know if it's something that is going to be in here for the long haul, or something that is, you know, declining as other technologies start declining.
Now, it's one of the great things about IT, I think, is very few things just disappear forever. It takes a long time to get rid of a technology, and Linux, Windows, Mac OS are all perfectly viable technologies that are going to be here for the foreseeable future. Practically the entire internet is running on Linux, so I don't think that's going anywhere anytime soon. Most organizations have Windows on all their desktops. It's not going anywhere soon. Mac OS has a huge market segment and market presence. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. So you don't have to worry from an operating system. You're pretty much covered. Don't spend a lot of time on Windows Phone. Otherwise, I think you're going to be fine.
Oh, okay. So, but is it advisable to, like, after obtaining the A+ set, is it advisable to go directly to the Linux Plus, the CompTIA Linux Plus?
That's perfectly reasonable if that's what you want to do. There's nothing set in stone here. There's no requirement that you go A to B to C to D. Find the thing you're interested in. If you've just finished A+, then you have a good foundation or a good starting point with operating systems. Some people go from A+ and get Microsoft certifications because they're really interested in learning Windows Server. Some people go to Linux Plus because they're really interested in the Linux side of things. Some people go over to Cisco because they know they want to be a network administrator. So find that thing that you want to go after, head that direction. You don't have to do this the rest of your life. IT is great because you can move around as much as you want, but find the thing that interests you the most and just head that direction. You can't go wrong. There is no wrong answer.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gary. I appreciate the call. I should have just said Linux is going to be, it's going to last about another month and we're never going to see it again. And then just wait for all the Linux people to send me emails. Not true. That's not what's happening. Most of what I run behind the scenes is Linux. People will always send me the emails that are, let's fight over an operating system. And I just don't get involved in those fights because my Professor Messer infrastructure is all Linux. Everything that's in front of me right here is mostly Mac OS. Windows is over here doing my streaming. I've got other Windows things I'm doing in the other room. So I don't care. I'm running everything. And they all work and they're all great. So there you go. No fights. Then we're all done. There's no fight, nothing to fight about. So, okay, well, we'll go do something else. Back to the phones. 484. Hi, caller. Which name were you calling from? Caller Keller. Are you there in PA?
Hello.
Hello. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Rob. Calling from Virginia.
Let's see if we can get that question out. What's your question for us today? Oh, we're hearing this.
I'm sorry. My question is for you today. So I bought in your security, your A+ practice exams, and I was wondering, past those, if you could recommend a third-party another set of third-party practice exams that are good in your opinion. Besides yours, I've used them all, but I just want to be certain.
I know there are a few out there. I know a lot of people have liked some that they've gotten on Udemy. That may be a good place to look. At least you could get some rankings from people on things they have seen. There's some other good books that have Q&A. Let's see if I stuck them on my website. I probably haven't on the A+ side. But I know that ExamCram used to have an A+ book that was nothing but practice questions. That may be a good place to go as well. So there's a couple places to go that have some good quality practice exams. Those would be good places to go. And for Udemy, at least, you've got people have ranked it and put ratings and comments in, so you can kind of figure out and separate the wheat from the chaff and really understand where the good ones are. That should be relatively obvious. I think we kind of got through the question though, but that's where I think most people would go. I think you pick the right one first by getting my practice exams book, which really does help a lot because the revenue from all of those books does keep all of the lights on here. It is an important part of what we do, and I want to be sure that people have quality materials that they can study from, but I absolutely understand that you'll want more. You've gone through that, now more. I haven't written any more. So you can always go through and figure out the details. How are my practice exams organized? Is it by objective? It is randomized like the actual test. So if you go to the book, the first third of the book is one test. The second third of the book is another test. The third third of the book is the third test. And they are randomized as if you were taking the exam in a testing center. The same randomization, the same distribution of question types as given to us on the exam objectives. It is randomized. You don't know what it is, where it's from until you go to the answer. And of course, in the answers, I point you back to the video so you can see the question I was asking. Is this from section 2.5 or is it section 3.3? And you can see which one it is because I list it there at the end of the question. But they are not organized in any way. You can't go to a particular section. You're taking it as if it is an actual practice exam to be able to work through that. The practice exam, the price on the practice exam varies whether you purchase it with the course notes or not. We didn't really talk about the course notes today, but the course notes, if you get them together, there's a little bit of a savings, but the practice exams are $25 by themselves or $20 if you buy them with the course notes. I think that's for the digital versions. It's a little bit different for the physical that I have here because paper is just so expensive to print. And there's a lot of pages. But I get some people like to have the book where you can just read the book. That's valuable. And I get it, which is why I offer it in the book form, but it just costs a little more. I just don't have a way around that. It's just that's the nature of physical things, I guess. But I'll ship them out. You buy it and I ship it, and you get the digital version for free if you buy the physical. So there's a benefit there as well to have that. So either way works for you. Some people love to have the physical. Some people love the digital. You've got the choice. You can do whichever one you like to be able to get through those. Question in the chat room, do I have plans to create a CCNA course? I'd love to do a CCNA course. It's more about time than anything else. Right now, there is, I've mentioned already, there is the Core 2 study, the practice exam book. So just like this one, except a 2 on it, where it says Core 1, now it says Core 2. That one's coming out. Obviously, Security Plus is getting updated. So that's kind of the latest thing that I'm doing is Security Plus. That's going to keep me busy for a month or two. And then after that, I have an opening. So I'm leaning towards a specific new set of videos. I'm just not locked in yet. So I'm kind of listening to what people tell me. People tell me I want Linux Plus, like the chat room just told me. I want Cisco, like the chat room just told me. So I don't know which one it will be. It's an interesting marketplace because there's a lot of Cisco stuff out there already. There's a lot of Linux stuff out there already. Do I duplicate what those people are doing, or do I do something else? Or maybe I do a completely different thing. I don't know. The advantage is I get to choose. I get to figure it out and figure out what the details are. It's one of those things. Some folks in the chat room asking what I recommend, what other products would I recommend from a Q&A? Would I recommend CompTIA products? Would I recommend these products? Would I recommend those products? I just don't have time to go through everybody else's products to see them. So I can't, if I had time to evaluate them, I could tell you, but I've just not seen them. I've just not worked with them. I've seen what other people have said about them, but I personally haven't worked with them. So I would probably recommend, if you really want to get feedback on it, the CompTIA subreddit's one of the best places to go to get feedback. You can throw it out there and see what other people say. You can search for previous threads and get a pretty good idea what other people have said about different products. There's a lot of conversation there that go back and forth over what people are doing with products. That's what I would recommend you do, which is probably going to be a better answer than one I could give you anyway, because mine is just from my perspective. I think a lot of other people throwing their ideas into the mix are good to hear about, both good and bad, to figure those out. Other people in the chat room, if you have purchased my practice exam, my course notes book in the past, and I didn't have the practice exam book available, and now you want to add it on, I will give you the combo price on it. I will give you the break on it. Just send me an email, hit the contact us link at the top, and I'll just send you a coupon. So that way you can just get it and you'll have the coupon and you can use that whenever you'd like to be able to figure that out and break those out. A lot of people like the CCNA. Some people said CISA would be a good one to do. That's certainly my wheelhouse, coming from IT security and the cybersecurity market. That certainly makes sense. A lot of people love the Cisco. That's also my wheelhouse. Used to be a network administrator. Used to set up wide area networks and local area networks, and so there's many places to go. I just don't know what it is yet. I don't have an answer for you because I change my mind every day. I guess it's one of the benefits of not having to do it yet is I get to really feel it out in my mind. What if I did this? What if I did that? And now Microsoft, of course, has changed a lot of things around too. So I don't know what their final, I don't know what Microsoft is doing with their certifications yet. We'll figure it out. We'll figure that out eventually. A good question. We haven't even brought it up today in the chat room. What am I hearing from CompTIA about on-site testing sites opening or closing doing based on the pandemic? Well, of course, CompTIA doesn't have control over what sites are open and what sites are closed in a particular geography. But there are places that are on-site testing, that are in a testing center, that are open, and you can go to a testing center and take your test in a testing center. Not all of them are closed at the moment. But of course, there is online testing as well. We're still getting mixed reviews on how well it's going for people. Some people it's going fantastically well. Some people it's been a disaster. It's sort of a combination of things. Again, the CompTIA subreddit's a good place to go get stories about that. There is, but you'd have to check in your area, call around to your testing centers, see if they are open. Then you get to decide whether you want to do that or not. I don't know right now if a testing center was open in my area, would I go there to take a test? That's a tough one because there's a keyboard and a mouse. Everything's dirty now. Have you noticed this? Everything, whether it's reasonable to think that or not. I don't want to touch anything. So we're all sort of in that world where we're being as straightforward as we can about this. We're trying to figure out those details, but we're all very on edge about where we go and what we do that is outside the scope of what we have to do. And I don't know if yet going to a testing center is comfortable for everybody yet, but there are some that are open. So you get to make the idea and figure out those details. Online testing, some people are having great success, like the folks in the chat room. There are folks that are doing all the right things and still having horrible experiences, though. So you just have to be prepared for things to go wrong, and I think you're fine. It's a game of expectations, right? If you expect it to be horrible, then you're absolutely so happy when it doesn't go that way. But if things go a bit sideways, you're prepared for it. You're mentally prepared for it to be able to make that happen. So that makes sense as well. Pearson VUE does accept laptop webcams for their tests. Absolutely. All the things you have to take the test online is available on the CompTIA website. They'll point you over to Pearson VUE where they've got all the details there, how to set up your room, how to set up the situation, how to run the sample exams before you even book it. You'll get all those things and have those pieces that are there. I agree. In some cases, it's very convenient and easy to run. In some cases, you do everything right and it still doesn't work, unfortunately. They're still kind of getting the bugs out. But I think the vast majority of people are doing very good with the online exams. It's just sort of these corner cases that are getting caught up, and I don't think Pearson VUE was quite ready for the corner cases. So they don't have an easy way to fix when there's big problems. They're figuring that out too. We're all trying to figure it out, and they're doing the best they can, but you just have to be prepared for it. It's a great opportunity to be able to take these at home. It's fantastic. We even have the option. So just be ready for it. Just put yourself in the right mindset and you'll be fine with it. I don't think that's a big deal to be able to have those there. And that's the key, I think, for most of us anyway, is to have that all there. And I think most places are doing a pretty good job. Whether you go take it in a testing center, I think everybody is cleaning things up and making things the way they should be. Or, of course, taking it online at home, there's some advantages there as well. Find the one that works for you. Put yourself in the right mindset, and I think you're going to be fine with it. Well, that brings us to the end. We did a major after show, a 2-hour after show today, but I think that worked out well for everybody. We got through your phone calls. You stuck around for the questions coming in. And being able to make all of these things work today. Thank you for being here in the first hour and sitting through my questions. We'll do this again on Thursday. Come on back in a couple days. We'll have our Core 2 study group session. We'd love to have you back here for that. Of course, we have more study group sessions available throughout the month for Network Plus and Security Plus. Feel free to check our online calendar to find out when the next live event is going to be by going to professormesser.com/calendar. Thanks for being here. We will see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Thanks, everyone.